Alright. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Salam sejahtera. Salam UITM. Alright. From us. Okay. Terima kasih kepada yang berbahagia Datuk Profesor Madya, Doktor, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, bersama-sama dengan bahagian pentaksiran dan penilaian akademik UITM, dan kali ini dengan kerjasama CG Alternative Assessment and e-Portfolio, dan insyaAllah today we have two event for this morning and also this afternoon, dan event tersebut adalah Designing Rubric for Thinking Process, dan petang nanti kita akan ada Design Rubric for Digital Skill. So terima kasih kepada semua warga akademik yang hadir, yang turut serta di YouTube channel bersama-sama dengan kami insyaAllah, dan saya Syamsul Nur Azlan bin Muhammad, merupakan pengarah daripada bahagian pentaksiran dan penilaian akademik, mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih, a warm welcome to all of you, kerana sentiasa memberikan sokongan yang baik kepada BPPA UITM dalam kita memantapkan lagi pentaksiran dan penilaian akademik di UITM secara umum, secara khususnya, dan sudah pastinya perkongsian ini tidak terhad kepada warga akademik di UITM. Kita juga menyambut kehadiran rakan-rakan kita daripada rakan-rakan universiti, sama ada universiti awam, universiti swasta ataupun politeknik, college community dan sebagainya, untuk bersama-sama kita memeriahkan lagi dalam memastikan pemerkasaan alternatif ataupun pemerkasaan pentaksiran dan penilaian secara keseluruhannya. Jadi alhamdulillah pada hari Jumaat yang berkat ini, kita dapat sekali lagi berkumpul, dan kita lihat pada sesi yang lepas kita bersama-sama dengan Puan Siti Hajar dan juga Encik Hamzah Tahir dalam memberikan input mereka tentang performance assessment, dan pada hari ini ada dua topik yang sangat menarik insyaAllah untuk pagi ini dan juga petang ini. Jadi sebelum kita mulakan majlis ilmu kita, okay, sesungguhnya kita mohonkan keberkatan daripada ilahi dan kita mulakan dengan bacaan Al-Fatihah. Auzubillahi minasyaitanirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Ya, kita berdoa. Dan alhamdulillah, pastinya hari ini saya tidak keseorangan. Saya ditemani oleh ahli CG saya, a young lecturer with passions, yang sangat orang kata dedikasi beliau terhadap pentaksiran pilihan ini sangat saya hargai. Dan di sini yang lecturer yang hari ini kita bawa untuk kongsikan pengalaman beliau dan juga apakah pendekatan yang digunakan to ensure that we can design a rubric for a thinking process. Jadi sebelum kita mulakan dengan lebih lanjut, I think that better I start to create some scene setting because this is very important dalam kita melihat pendekatan kita untuk memastikan kerangka MQF 2.0 ini dijayakan dengan baik sekali. Sudah pastinya kita melihat kepada potensi-potensi ataupun apakah kaedah yang sesuai untuk kita melihat penilaian secara kognitif ini dan apakah perkara yang patut kita lihat dalam menilai keupayaan pelajar. What is the most important thing that we should address? Because of when we talk about the thinking process, there are lots of mechanisms, there are lots of approach, there are lots of methods, but today we try our best to share what is the best. Mungkin ada banyak lagi kaedah-kaedah yang mungkin boleh diguna pakai, tapi dalam tempoh 10 pagi hingga pukul 1 ini nanti kita akan kongsikan apa yang kita katakan yang terbaik based on what we curate for our participant for today. Alright, so let me to share with you the content of the today. Alright, before we proceed and go further. Alright, so this morning topic designing rubric for cognitive and digital skill, but today morning kita akan fokus kepada cognitive skill. I do believe that most of the program you will assessing the cognitive ability to ensure that the students can solve the problems and also to apply their knowledge towards the field of expertise, dan pada masa yang sama juga can apply for their real life. So as usual, I will introduce my CG group. So for your information, BPPA mempunyai sekumpulan CG group, collaborative group yang mana dikotai oleh saya, dan ini adalah 4 ahli yang tidak asing lagi. Alright, Puan Siti Hajar baru jumpa dengan semua warga-warga UiTM pada beberapa minggu yang lepas, dan we have TS Nurzeatul Hamimah untuk petang ini. This is Dr. Nadia, ketua di BBPA, dan juga Puan Siti Nur Amalina yang berada bersama dengan saya sekarang. Alright, so I want to start with how does we look on to measure the student progress and development. So we do believe that there must be a mechanism on how can we evaluate our students, not only looking at delivery or deliver the contents of the knowledge, but also to see how does the learning experience trigger our student reactions. And the most important part, in what ways the students demonstrate their fundamental skills, life skills, value, and responsibility. And one of the components that we should emphasize is the cognitive skills. And at the end of the day, we want to ensure that there might be changes on the student behavior, especially when we talk about the maturity of thinking process. So how does we design the program that address the competency of cognitive skills, and at the end of the day, how does this curriculum impact and give a result to the outcome? So that's the reason why reactions, learning, behavior, and result play important roles. Jadi, when we talk about rubrics, of course, there are 5 very basic and fundamentals. Number 1 is the reason why we need to have the rubric, because of we want to assess the authentic assessment, because of we are provide students with real world problems, the real mimic situation. We provide them with many cases to ensure that the students can do their best to utilize their potentials of thinking process. And the reason why we need to have the rubric because of we want to communicate the expectation. We have the learning outcomes. We have the criteria. And how does the rubric address all of this matter? And we share our feedback with our students. That's the reason why only feedback can improve our students. Only feedback can ensure that our students grow over the time. The reason why, because of the feedback would allow the student to have the reflective thinking. So whether they are good, whether they are not good, the reflective thinking will motivate our students and to gain their interest to further and continue their studies. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the fairness of the testing, we can ensure the fairness of the testing can be happen throughout all the courses. Sebab because of now we are more focused on the alternative assessment, we have maybe having less of conventional methods or types of assessment. That's the reason why rubric play an important role. Okay, when we talk about what is the best methods or approach to design a rubrics, there are always a simple way on how to construct our rubrics. And I think that these actions and steps is easy to follow, but again, what makes it different is how we want to measure the data and what kind of that learning analytic that we want to gain from our students. That's the reason why every time we want to establish our rubric, we need to define the purpose of learning task. So what is our purpose of the learning task? It must be derived from the cognitive skills. It must be derived from the sub skill set, and it must be derived from what are the criteria that you want to looking at. And again, when you have defined the purpose of the learning task, then you start to think about what are the types of rubric that we want to address. So there are two types of the rubrics, analytical rubrics and holistic rubrics. And normally we choose for the analytical rubrics because of we want to provide a very good descriptors that allow students to improve based on the feedback given by us. And the most important part here is we know what is the purpose, we know how to choose the rubric type, but again, the most complicated thing here is to define the criteria of the rubrics. How best we can identify the criteria of the rubrics. Do we really sure this criteria can really achieve our learning outcome? And again, this is need and require us to do a lot of study. And when we can define the good criteria, inshallah, I think that we can measure easily our student competency based on that particular criteria. And number 4, we need to design the rating scales. That's the reason why. The rating scales that determine whether the students are lower achiever, moderate achiever, and high achiever. And not to forget that every time we construct our rubric, please don't forget to write your performance descriptors, because of the performance descriptors will allow you to discriminate the lower achiever, the moderate achiever, and the high achiever. So these are the 5 steps that you can use to establish your rubrics. All right, so now these are the comparison between analytical rubrics and holistic rubric. All right, so maybe some of you not familiar. Oh, rupanya ada 2 jenis rubrik. Yes, there are 2 types of rubrics, analytic rubric, holistic rubric, and normally we use the analytic rubric to measure the progress. And this is how the formative assessment will allow us to diagnose the students, to give a specific feedback and do the interventions. And the holistic rubric, normally we want to measure the achievement. We do this at our summative assessment. We look on the performance, and again, we want to see the attainments of the students. All right, for this morning, we will talk about the thinking process. So when we talk about the thinking process, we are in the thinking of the way of thinking. I just want to quote, there is some scholar from Harvard, all right? This article will pick up from CNBC, all right? On that articles say that there is no specific skills will get you ahead in the future, but way of thinking wills. And the key skills of the future, well, is not quite a skill. It's an approach, a philosophy, and a way of thinking. And it's critical you adopt it as soon as you are able. So we cannot wait to apply a good way of thinking. We need to think about it. We have to think seriously about this. How to nurture a very good thinking process, and how does our curriculum and also how does our program and course address into this issue. And I just want to recite in the perspective of Islamic, all right, akal in Al-Quran. So uh, I do some kind of reading from Yusuf 2003, all right. He said that akal has been mentioned 49 times, akala, 1 time, ya kilun, 22 times, na kilu, 1 times, ya killuha, 1 times, ta kilun, 24 times, meaning that akal play an important role to ensure that the akal can bring you something that differentiate you how good you are. So that's the reason why if you look on the Ibn Sina divide akal into 4 parts: active, actual, potential, and empirical. So I think that this is very wonderful if we can discover what means by active, actual, potential, and empirical, because we do this at our classroom. And I do believe that most of us will activate our students' higher order taking skills through activity. We will give them the actual problem solving. We will see their potential on solving the problem. Of course, they will going through the scientific approach on how to address and investigate any cases, any study that related to their study. Okay, and if we refer back to the MQF 2.0, the cognitive has been described that related to the thinking or intellectual capabilities, all right, and the ability to apply knowledge and skill, and the capacity to develop of intellectual skill progressively begin from understanding, critical, creative thinking, applying and analyzing, synthesizing in the field of knowledge and practice. So meaning that the MQF 2.0 give us a very broad terms on how can we address and how can we assess the cognitive skills. If we look on the perspective of cognitive domain, there are a lot of scholars, for example, from Gardner, Maurice, Kregels, Revised Bloom, Marzano, and Kendall. And all of this study is actually to address on how does the cognitive ability has been addressed into a different approach, a different methods, and a different strategy. If you look on the Gardner, normally they are focused on the verbal information, intellectual skill, and cognitive strategy. And same goes with Krieger, meaning that they are using the cognitive learning to ensure that the students can practice their ability to solve the problems. But at we usually use the revised Bloom taxonomy because of these are the things that we adopt for quite some times. And even we also been exposed with Marzano and Kendall. And what I want to bring here is the new way of looking at the cognitive skills in the sense of typology of learning. So meaning that there are 3 types that we can ensure how can we nurture the thinking process. Number 1, we call it a knowing or synthetic. The characterized as acquisition of the comprehension of information and knowledge of specific areas. And I do believe that when we talk about this first level, normally we focus on the information and knowledge acquisition, and this level is synthetic and is a nurture. All right. And if we look towards on the second paradigm, competency or semantic, we are talking about to include the sub-intellectual activity of application such analysis, synthesis, and also evaluation. And at this level, all right, so at this level, we are trying to apply the knowledge acquisition and set our student in a condition that they can use their potentials of sub-intellectual activity. And the high levels of looking at how can the students nurture their good thinking process on how they are performing as a pragmatics, meaning that at these competency levels, the focus of the learning is preparing the competent learners who are ready to perform on the job and who can apply the principles to complex cases within an academic setting. And since it's focused on the intellectual application, such analysis, synthesis, and evaluation of the learning context, this level is essential semantic of learning. So that's the reason why we should bring the students uh, towards on the content that allows the learner to perform the job. And the major instructional goal of this level is to develop the students and to transfer the knowledge and allow them to practice in the real world. So these are the typology of learning outcome in the cognitive skills. So there are the dimensions of topology when we talk about knowing, competency, and performing, and how does we do some kind of remapping, looking at the dimensions of the knowledge, such factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. So meaning that you can use this typology to decide what kind of approach that the best for your students. And we do believe that when we talk about the potential of cognitive ability, we are talking about which types of learner you are, whether you are the left brains learners, or you are the right brains learners, because of the two of this side, they have a different kind of attributes. But however, we are not looking towards on to focus on certain part. We are looking at to complementing the left brain and the right brain, and how does we can integrate the both strength and to see the real potential of the students on solving their problems. That's the reason why we need to understand what the differentiation between convergent thinking, lateral thinking, and divergent thinking. And I think that for today's topics, inshallah, Amalina will talk much about on how we can solve the problems. And yes, when we talk about what types learner you are, there are many kind of thinking process, such creative thinking, computational thinking, critical thinking, and design thinking. But inshallah, for today, with time that we have, we will focus on the critical thinking, on how does we can do this at our classroom, and how does we can do this at our courses, and how does we can assess student critical thinking at program level. And at the end of the day, we can see that the student have a good skill set on solving a problem, not only solving a problem, but provide with a very good solutions, a very solid interventions. And again, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the student really can face the real world and can face on how to solve everything that in front of them, and they will differentiate us, and this will differentiate them whether they are good thinkers or not. So without further ado, right, I think that I want to pass this stage to Puan Siti Amalina daripada UiTM Terengganu, orang jauh ni, orang jauh daripada UiTM Terengganu Bukit Besi, dan saya pasti orang UiTM Terengganu akan berbanggalah dengan wakil tunggal daripada sana. Dan insya-Allah Puan Siti Amalina akan kongsikan. Okay, the stage is yours, Puan Siti Amalina. Right?
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Syamsul, for the opening clarifications. Memang pack semua benda dekat dalam satu session. Okay. Sekejap, saya tengah nak buka saya punya slide. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Right, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Amalina. Saya daripada kampus Bukit Besi seperti yang Dr. Syamsul sebutkan tadi. So tally dengan apa yang Dr. Syamsul present tadi. Hari ini we are going to have a look at the critical thinking part. Okay, so let me present my slide first. Okay, so this is the view of our campuses in Terengganu, Bukit Besi Terengganu. We have mining area dekat sini dulu. So dia dah jadi lombong bijih lah sebenarnya. Okay, so a bit introductions on our campuses. We have 3 program here. Satu diploma kejuruteraan mechanical, and then another one is diploma kejuruteraan kimia, and then another one is diploma hygiene. That one is from FSG. Okay. So currently I was trained before as a mechanical engineer, but for now I have embarked into education in engineering and doing my part-time, and my area of interest is more on problem solving and thinking. So this is what we are going to have a look at today. Okay. So what is thinking skills actually? Okay, it is a shout out to the other cognitive assessment. Seperti apa yang Dr. Syamsul tunjukkan tadi, we have various of thinking assessment, cognitive assessment. However, thinking skills ni kita kurang bagi penekanan. We simply look at the typology in terms of knowledge, but the level of variations tu we tak nampak lagi. Okay, so mungkin we dah nampak, but there's a room of improvement there, right? So let's take 1 minute and let's have a reflections on this karikatur sebenarnya. Saya suka karikatur ni. It is simple but message sampai orang kata. Okay. So this is actually keadaan dalam otak lah oleh student SPM, right? So memandangkan saya mengajar student diploma, I've seen this phenomena a lot, right? Especially when you teaching subjects that they need to recall back what they have learned throughout SPM years. Okay, so and also maybe some of you who are teaching degree level, you will find this kind of students bila dia go into diploma. Daripada diploma bawa ke degree. So what exactly the problem here? Are we not assessing the cognitive enough ataupun macam mana kita nak scrutinize the thinking, right? A lot of thinking associates to memorizations. How are we going to move beyond memorizations so that it becomes a second nature to the students on whatever knowledge that they gain, right? So that they can retrieve at any time according to the context that they are going to learn. Okay, so according to World Economic Forum, for 2022 Skills Outlook, we have on the blue side is the growing and the grey side is the declining. So if you can see the rating from 1 to 10, analytical thinking and innovations is growing. Okay, to have some sense, we have another diagram that shows the movement, decreasing, stable and increasing. So you can see pretty much the distributions of each of the skills needed by the time of 2025. All right. And if we have a look closely, okay, saya enlargekan daripada 10 tu, we have a lot sebenarnya, tapi color macam hijau ni and is categorized as problem solving. Okay, so analytical thinking, complex problem, critical thinking, creativity, reasoning, all this activity of thinking is actually associated to when you are solving problem. Okay, the others in black and the other color is for the other competencies. For example, number 6 is on the social and teamwork skills. And number 7 and number 8 is the one that we are going to continue to learn during the webinar sessions on the afternoon, right? The digital skills. Okay, so according to MQF 2.0, cognitive skills now they are put into cluster, right? So we can read from the MQF 2.0 document that distinguish between cognitive skills that diploma students should acquire, the bachelor students should acquire, and the master students should acquire. So I just put it in here so that we can see in general the developmental phase that the students should be able to acquire at different level of educations. So memandangkan thinking skills tadi yang kita sebutkan, computational skills, problem solving, computational skill, analytical skill, critical thinking skills, design thinking. All these thinking skills can be carried out through problem solving, right? So the delivery environment should be in the problem solving process so that all this, we can tap in all these thinking skills that Dr. Syamsul have presented earlier. Alright, so kita nak try buat satu aktiviti sekejap sebab just for ease out this session this morning. Okay, so kita akan pergi ke menti.com. Alright, so you went to www.menti.com and kita pakai kod 4379951 and cuba kita jawab soalan di situ. Describe what you consider as important for the students to gain from the course that you teach. Okay. Again, kita ke menti.com dan boleh pakai kod 4379951. And we try to share our thoughts on this before we go further on the form of assessment that we can use. Boleh log in ke? Ada problem? Okay, so we have one coming in. This person consider knowledge of this course and application skills for the future. And then we have konsep dan aplikasi, independence and learning. Keep it coming so that we can have some reflections on how others see their courses and their program as well as a platform of this course this morning. So some consider important that they know the basic theory up to the applications of the theory. Some says that it is important for them to be able to understand, apply and create something useful as practical skills. It is important so that the student can practice the subject practically, that will benefit especially in expanding their career and also their studies. Lifelong learning, this is a bit broad, but we are good. Digital skills for petang ini, that one is part of lifelong learning. Programming skills, ability to connect what they have learned to the real examples happening in the society. Okay, this is bingo. Love to learn, lifelong learner, yes. Knowledge and practical skills, understand the objective, okay. Knowledge of the subject, analyzing the situations and problems, ability to use suitable tools to configure and troubleshooting, yes. So we have a lot of, we have about 55 engagement right now. So from what I can see here, okay, this is all what considered important in the perspective of the educator itself. Okay, later maybe we can reflect back, are those met by the time they completed 14 weeks, or are those met by the time they completed the one cohort cycle? Okay, so these are the things that we wanted to look at today between what the educator consider as important, how they communicate with the assessment that we give to the students, and how the students demonstrate the assessment that we give to them. Okay, so all these constructions must be aligned so that it communicate the things that we want them to acquire. Okay, at this moment there are 81. Maybe we are going to come back to this again nanti towards the end. So we just wanted to reflect back. Okay, the knowledge regarding the subject, the skill and the competence, the appropriate attitude. Yeah, the appropriate attitude, we wanted to know whether the attitude can be assessed or not, right? In fact, I found one rubric, one assessment that could assess akhlak. That one is done by PhD students in UTM. And the framework that she used is from Al-Ghazali. Okay. All right, we will come back to this again, right? It is good to know that we have lots of answers coming in from various disciplines. So you will see, you can reflect what others are thinking, deem as important for their courses. Okay, so we go back to my slides here. We just keep the answers flowing. So maybe I can share the findings later. Okay. So through problem solving, okay, problem is defined as a question or issue that is uncertain and so must be examined and solved, right? It is uncertain. Like for a simple example, we don't know where to have our lunch, right? Ataupun tak tahu petang ni nak order food panda ke atau nak masak. Uncertain. Tapi the level of the degree of difficulties tu is different. Okay. Alright, and problem become problems when there is a felt need or difficulty that propels one towards solution. For instance, tadi hal makan tadi kita akan terfikir kalau kita rasa nak makan. Okay, tapi in classroom practice, for example, perhaps some of us pernah lalui perkara ni. Students, they don't know how to approach or how to begin with a solutions, especially when doing final year projects or certain projects. Because sometimes we probably, the context, they don't feel the need to provide a solutions. Okay, so it is important for us to inject the felt of need that propels one towards solution. And perhaps by another simple example for today, for instance, you might want to have a look at the felt need to assess your students' thinking skills or your students' digital skills. So one of the solutions is that you come into this webinar today. Okay. So given that, probably the fastest way to enhance learning, right, like you are doing right now, in schools, universities, and corporate trainings is to implement assessment that assess meaningful learning, such as problem solving. Okay. All right. So can we have another session here to see how do we generally assess problem solving? Okay, we go back to the menti.com yang sama. Okay, I'm going to move to the next question. All right, so how do you generally assess to students' problem solving skills? This one you can pilih lebih daripada satu lah. We have seven jawapan dekat situ. Bukanlah jawapan, pilihan. So we can see the votes coming in. I think the quizzes for problem solving skills are not that preferred form because of usually we have a more lengthy problem to be solved as compared to quizzes, the structure maybe. But in a way, quiz can be used to assess using formative way. Because sometimes bila you solve the problem, especially projects yang takes about 12 week, 10 weeks punya variations, in between, it is best to have quizzes just to tap in students, just to tap in the analytical of assessment, how they are doing along the 12 week of assessment. All right, so we have out of this 80 plus, we have 58 assignment. We have variations of projects, case study and assignment, more than 50, right? And test and final exam less than that. Okay. I think Dr. Syamsul, this is a good reflections.
Indication, yes,
Yes,
this is
yes,
a good
yes, that's the word.
reflections. Yeah.
Is this a good indications that we are not our educator are no more relying much on the final exam and test. We are moving towards, as you said, alternative assessment.
I think that maybe because of the UITM embark into the policy that we don't have any final exam, and I think that is a good drive for all the lecturers to see on what is the best new direction on assessing the students' ability, especially when we talk about the cognitive skills. So I think that this data is quite interesting because of we can see that the project, case study, and assignment, there are quite a number here. And I do believe that the practice now here is to look not only just the belief is not only just a final exam we can really assess on the cognitive skills. I think that this is a very good indication, and I do believe that every each of us eager to know what is the best and how can they improve their
Rubrics quality,
rubrics
isn't it?
quality. Yes.
Because if currently we are in the stage of only only assessing the end product,
Yep.
probably we are going to have a look at what else, what types of assessment in between that we can embed together in this kind of form of assessments.
Yeah.
Okay, we have about 111 now, dia punya response, but the taburan ni memang seronok lah. Saya pun seronok tengok. Meaning that the awareness is there. It's just a matter of pushing forward into forward thinking assessment. Okay, I'm going to stop now. And we are going to go back to my slide presentations. Okay. All right. Thank you for your engagements. It really tells a lot for today. And I am happy because I hope throughout these sessions, the material that I have prepared will help you along the way. Okay, so I've been using this trauma cycle adaptations, adapted from words. This one, I just want to try out, just want you to have some reflections, okay? Past 2 semester, we are already in this pandemic of COVID, and we can see now from this trauma cycle, we can do our own assessment, where are we right now in terms of delivery. Okay, I think in terms of delivery, online delivery especially, kita mungkin dah move on 6 kot, 6, 7, 8. Some of us are already in 8 phase. Okay, but the question now, where are we in terms of assessment? Okay, for the past 2 semester, kita tengok ada banyak bengkel on delivery. In fact, the technology tools that we can use. But what about the assessment? This is just a reflections on your own faculty, on your own practice. Where are we right now? As far kalau kita nak relatekan balik dengan jawapan yang kita dapat daripada bar graph tadi, okay, bar chart tadi, it seems that kita di tangga yang kelima sebab we are moving more towards the alternative assessment rather than final exam and test. Okay. Hopefully after this bengkel petang ni, we skyrocketed lah. Okay. Alright, so problem solving process. In general, problem solving, we have, this is the process. We need to identify first the problem. Okay, the students need to identify the problem first, and then they need to be able to analyze and synthesis, and then we go for solution generation. So this is the process that the students need to go through before they present us, before they presented us with the final product. Okay. So what are the desired characteristic of a problem solver? Okay, they will need to capable to understand given problem. They have to capable to use good problem solving process. Okay, a self-directed learner regularly reflects their learning. So this is what I can in general rumuskan daripada apa menti.com yang menti Dimiter yang kita buat tadi. The first questions tadi, what are you expecting from desired from your students kan, what matters to you. So saya boleh rumuskan inilah capability to understand given problem sebab they need to be able to use problem solving process. This is very discipline based, tergantung kepada disiplin tersebut. Tapi untuk item 3 dan 4 ni is very generic skills for all disciplines. Okay, which towards the end are going to develop a lifelong learner. Okay, so we need to understand first certain elements in learning to solve problems before, so that kita tahu kedudukan delivery tu di mana, assessment tu di mana, and what kind of skills yang kita nak tap in. So different types of problems. We have story problem, decision making, design problems, strategic performance, troubleshooting and diagnosis, policy analysis problem. So if I can read through, there's a response dekat YouTube live chat daripada Tuan Syahrul atau Dr. Syahrul. He says that verb adalah bergantung kepada bidang masing-masing. Ada verb yang sama, tak sama maksud atas kemahirannya pada bidang yang lain. Yes, it is true. And also it is very discipline based, it is very subject matter, and it really depends on what kind of problems you are crafting for your students. So this one is more on the crafting the curriculum or the courses as a whole. Okay, and then we have the learning environments that are suitable for this type of problems being taught. So this different type of problem solving learning environment is communicating with one another, right? It should be aligned together so that it will help in assessing the cognitive skills that we want. Okay, so we are going to have a look at the cognitive skills assessment. Okay, so we have few here: defining the problem schemas, analogically comparing problems, understand causal relationship in problems, question strategies for supporting problem solving, arguing to learn to solve problem. We are going to model the problems, metacognition regulations of problem solving. So these are all the cognitive skills that we can go beyond. I've said in these comment sections, I read through tadi ada, this can go beyond Bloom's taxonomy tadi. If you remember Dr. Syamsul slides tadi, we have tapped in different typology kan. So the metacognition is actually going beyond the typology in Bloom's yang kita selalu pakai tu. Okay, yang kita biasa pakai. Alright, so some of these cognitive skills kita boleh masukkan dalam formative assessment. Some of it, what I'm going to present for today, kita boleh pakai dalam summative assessment. Okay, so I try to map making it more practical, right? This is what I learned from the book that I read on behavioral, cognitive behavior, right? So this researcher, these scientists are talking about the change of behavior. Why we are so reluctant to change? or why is it susah untuk mulakan langkah yang pertama. So one of the suggestion was that piggyback. Dia kata piggyback. So macam kita dukung anak belakang kita kan. So we just piggyback on the things that we already biasa. Okay. So untuk tujuan hari ini, we try to show you certain cognitive skills to be assessed yang kita boleh buat dalam form of assessment yang kita dah terbiasa. That's why on the menti.com tadi, Mentimeter tadi, we have a selections of 7 selections of assessment. So we just wanted to see dekat mana variations yang paling berkenan lah, senang cerita kan. So we can just piggyback our new ataupun our findings for today untuk dimasukkan ke dalam kita punya assessment, so it becomes new behavior. Okay. Alright, so in assessing our thinking, right, we need to understand, tadi Dr. Syamsul dah go through a bit steps in creating rubrics. I learned steps in creating rubric too, if I'm not mistaken, in 2019 during Dr. Syamsul conduct alternative assessment classes in ILD. Okay. Alright. So we start with the in order for us to have a rubrics, we need to understand the concepts of rubrics performance first. And then we go through the elements that we need, and then how are we going to use it, how can we create it, and then I'm going to show you some work examples. Okay. Okay, so we go through the concept first, right? Okay, what it is, the concept. Okay, so performance rubric, right? In general, we are going to see, can the students perform the task? Okay, if so, what is the quality of how well or poor they do? I think this is tally with the previous performance rubric that we have daripada speaker kita Encik Hamzah from FITA. Okay, but what it is not, so rubric is not to, kita tak develop rubric tu untuk student kita remember how to solve the problem. Okay, we don't create that rubric for to assess do they remember the domain content required to solve the problem. This is pretty much what we generally do, right? Though we say that we have moved beyond C1, we have C5, C6 for example, but if the question is going to us in a certain manner, very well structured, for example in final exam or in test, the student are going to see the pattern of answering the question, especially those in technical sciences or engineering, for example. So the flow of solving the problem, they definitely going to see the steps in solving that problem. Though we said that we are going to assess this problem in C5 or C4, for example, but when the assessment that we give, okay, doesn't demonstrate that kind of thing, and the students can retrieve somewhere else on how to solve the problems, and they repeatedly do that thing, it's going to become a remembering as well. So it is a threshold there, depends on the disciplines you are in. But we can do something by having a rubrics. Okay. So the elements in the rubric, students must develop a response or product. Okay, this one we have no problem bila kita create rubric untuk projects. Okay, selalunya kita create rubric untuk projects, and some of us mungkin ada nature discipline, kita ada assignment and written assignment or essay. Okay. So assessment consists of direct observation of student behavior on task or on the product that they produce. So usually for project ataupun written assignment, kita akan tengok dia pada end product lah yang dia produce. Okay. And then we assess the quality of the solution by using rubrics. Okay, so this rubrics yang we talk about at this level, I believe very discipline based according to subject matter, and we assess the quality of end product usually. Okay. All right, and then how are we going to use this rubrics? Rubrics will be able to describe level of performance. That's why tadi dalam apa tu Dr. Syamsul punya slide study, we have level of performance. Okay, how well did the students do? And then we use rubrics to communicate parameters of good solutions. Okay, then only we know the progressions that the students made, right? Or the students themselves can evaluate their solutions. And also rubrics providing feedback informative manner to enhance the quality of students' performance. Okay. So the problem with rubrics is that most people recognize an excellent performance when they see it, but often are unable to say why the performance was excellent. So by having a rubrics, kita jelaslah apa yang dikatakan dengan level 3, apa yang dikatakan dengan level 2, and what the students can do to reach that level. So imagine if they have got used to certain rubrics on solving problems in semester 1 membawa ke semester 5. Okay, so we are going to have some sort of matured students on in semester 5. We know that the maturity comes by experience, but we don't know the quality of the performance. So by having rubrics, and if the students are already get used to that rubrics, they can see, oh, on the project design during semester 3, they are doing this kind of these are the level of their performance. So what about in semester 5? It's not just about the end result, whether they get A minus, B or C, but they have a very constructive feedback on how they are doing well. Okay. So next we are going to see how do we create. Okay. So seperti yang slide Dr. Syamsul tadi, we need to determine what are the skills to be assessed first. So in this webinar, it's about cognitive skills, and petang nanti it's about digital skills. But looking at the type of problems tadi, awal-awal slide yang sebelum ni kita ada tadi, okay, types of problems ada banyak, and we can tap in cognitive skills yang pelbagai. Kita can tap in pelbagai skills dalam satu problem tu. Okay, so you will see nanti towards the end petang kita ada digital skills. One of it is information literacy, and information literacy can be tapped in together with problem solving skills, sebab problem solving tu dekat situ ada, first and foremost you need to identify the problem. So identifying problem, one of it are going to have searches punya ni kan, searches skill. So searches biasanya student akan pakai digital punya information skills lah. Okay, next we have to define an operational definition of each skills to be assessed. Okay, so for example, kita kalau communication cognitive skills tu kita nak analytical ke, ataupun kita nak thinking dia critical, dia provide a critical judgement ke. Okay, kalau communication tu maybe if kita boleh put on more inclusivity, what if the students are not able to speak. Okay, do we have any other platform, any other way of skills to measure the communications through writing maybe, right? Okay, and then we craft the items that describe acceptable and unacceptable performance. Okay, this is as per described by Dr. Syamsul earlier. Okay, are we going to take questions, Dr. Syamsul? For now?
So far there's no question. Okay. All right, and I think that the reason why we are not focused on work, because we do believe that each program can decide what is the best work for them. I think that the most important part on this webinar, we are focusing on what is the best approach that we can use in assessing the cognitive skill. So I think that it's quite good. It's actually if and also we encourage that if anyone can want to ask a questions, or you want to do some kind of feedback or suggestion, we are welcome all the participants to have that. All right, okay.
We have one from Dr. Sharifah.
All right.
Akhlak can be seen as similar to attitude. What's your comment on that, Dr. Syamsul?
Yes, akhlak, yes, it can be similar to the attitudes, all right? But however, I think that we also can address on the cognitive part. So I think that before they can apply and practice, I think that instilling the fundamentals of the good akhlak, I think that is required on the cognitive ability to digest the important information regarding on the context of akhlak. And I think that when they understood and how and know how to and know how to apply, and I think that the attitude or the effective domain will come together. So I think that I think that the cognitive and effective domain will be complementing each other, inshallah. All right.
Okay, all right. I think I'm going to proceed with my slides here. Okay, so this is this is the desired character of a problem solver. Okay, so now we are going to have a look at the workable examples that I try to suggest here, which is using the concept of piggyback tadi. Okay, we are not going to impose you on changing much, but we can have some reflections here on how we can do. So we have a column of suggested form of assessment. Probably towards the ends of this session, you are going to have a bigger extension discourse with your faculty member on how to tap in all these cognitive skills. The idea was that I just wanted to show a workable example so that it can be transferred to your own subject matter. Okay. Alright. There's an interesting question here. Saya terpaksa ambil sekejap, Dr. Syamsul. From TS Dr. Aniza, adakah test dan quiz tidak memerlukan rubrik? Biasanya rubrik hanya melibatkan soft skill assessment. Test dan rubrik hanya dilihat dari standard JSUB. Okay, I'm not going to touch on the JSUB standard. That one will be, kalau Dr. Syamsul boleh comment on that. But what I'm trying to say is that yes, quizzes dan test juga boleh pakai rubrik. We will see that one example throughout this session. Okay. So, so the next column that I have, mungkin nanti kita break sekejap, kita take on that question balik. Boleh, Dr. Syamsul?
Yeah, I think that all the dah banyak soalan mula masuk. I think that daripada TS Dr. Irniza, Zurina, I think that from Noliana, I think that we will address all of this question. It's quite interesting question, but I think that I will let Amalina to
Okay.
continue first, and then we will entertain all the questions, inshallah.
Alright, I think I'm going to have one row habis dulu, assignment case
Alright.
study ni,
Great.
workable examples, before we move to the next workable example final year project. Okay? Alright, so before we go for the suggested assessment and cognitive skills, there are one thing that I think we have to address first, okay? Because it really relevant to thinking process. So dalam secara generalnya, we have two types of thinking process. One is inductive, the other one is deductive ways of thinking. Right? That I couldn't find more specific tiga segi, but I hope this gambar rajah represent what I'm going to talk about lah. So deductive biasanya it comes from a premise yang you already have a certain facts that you know. Okay, and then you try to expand it into a general form, right? Whereas the inductive way, okay, we always have a general or some sort of abstract idea, and then we go the other way around, how to tap into a more focus. Okay, secara general, I'm talking about secara general, some of us, especially those from technical sciences, they have this kind of deductive thinking. So when they try to project their ideas, try to have some kinds of suggestions or argument, they have these kinds of deductive relations, and it makes quite hard to communicate with others because you have your own bias, but others don't get the premise where you are in at the moment. Okay. Whereas some other students are or we ourselves have this kind of inductive thinking that mm, the abstract ideas need to be focus on certain things, but we start with the abstractions first. Okay, is an example that we have here is number 1, 2, 3 punya ayat ni. This one is actually deductive way. So it claims that my mom likes chocolate, my sister likes chocolate, therefore all women likes chocolate. So this is a deductive kind of premise. A bit bahaya because sometimes dia tak acknowledge their own bias. Okay, and this is the kind of thinking yang kita boleh tap in through certain assessment yang kita akan propose lah towards the end of the sessions. Okay, so in educational setting, if I can simplify this thing so that we can see the variations of deductive approach and inductive approach. Just for you to reflect on yourself, the classroom practice on your own, right? So approach to curriculum design, if you have the kind of deductive thinking, we always set to fundamentals to and then towards applications. Okay, but for the inductive thinking, kita set our class into real world applications first, and then we structured it into fundamentals. Okay, so in terms of determinations of the content, biasanya deductive ni is syllabus driven. Okay, dia sangat syllabus driven. So after topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, dia tak boleh langkah topic application dulu, lepas tu kita patah balik ke teori. It is a no-no. Okay, but for inductive purpose, I think inductive punya thoughts are lebih mesra dengan kita punya philosophy of outcome-based education, where we focus on the learning objective. Alright. So approach to delivery, because of the thinking sets that we have, the deductive thinking sets, dia suka compartmentalizekan courses tu, right? So it is really hard to see beyond, especially when you are training the students to be professional. Ini kalau bachelor level lah, bachelor level, master level. Where they are inquire at this point of urgency ataupun nature kita yang keep on changing ni, dynamic changes. So we need to have a T-shaped professional. So it is okay for us to develop one specific expertise, but we need to have this various form of knowledge as well, but still within our disciplines lah, right? Still within the boundary of our disciplines. So if we have this kind, if the educator and the learner have this kinds of inductive way of thinking, dia akan lebih engaging bila when it comes to the theoretical part, because they see the relations of the real world. Okay, it will be problem if you are not aware the kind of students that you have in class. If you are the deductive type of thinking, that will be a problem. That will be a conflict when you have the students are inductive type of thinking. And this thing I learned bila question starts to pop up. When we allow students 3 minutes questions, so the questions start to pop up. So you can see some students have this inductive kind of thinking, and some students have this deductive kind of thinking, right? And then another comparison, kita boleh tengok content emphasize. So deductive emphasizing more on facts, formulas and algorithms. That's why they're in sequence. Chapter 1, chapter 2, you need to know the facts first, and then we go for formulas, and then we go for algorithms. Okay. If you don't get the facts right, you cannot apply this formula at all. Okay. But for inductive, it is balanced between content, skills, and attitudes. Meaning, in order for you to solve a certain problem, you will need this kind of content. Okay, this enough content for this kind of problem. This is the skills that we are going to tap in, and the attitudes towards the task being given. All right, and finally, we have here, we have content organization. So as we expect from the deductive ways of thinking, it presents basic principles and theories, and then they drive through formulas and algorithms and shows application and assigns work to students. In fact, this thing we can see daripada final exam assessment. Sometimes kita put it in chronological manner. Okay. It is advantage for the students in terms of markah dia. Okay. Yelah, after assessment yang 2-3 jam tu dia dapat tap in lah kan, final exam 3 jam. So kalau you put it in sequence. But the problem is bila students want to transfer in real work environment. Sebab real work environment you tak ada sort of constraint, but you need to develop your structure. So you have banyak konsep, how you're going to have the structure combined together. But that one is more on delivery. I do not want to touch on that. We have one type of assessing model, okay, on cognitive model. Maksudnya student dia tunjuk, tapi saya cadang itu lebih sesuai untuk formative assessment, right? Hari ni kita nak fokus pada summative type saja. Okay, so this is actually tadi Dr. Syamsul ada sebutkan Mirza and Kendall, isn't it, Dr. Syamsul?
Marzano and Kendall.
Yes, Marzano and Kendall.
Yes.
Marzano and Kendall. I kind of like this dimension sebabnya it goes beyond macam Dr. Syamsul sebut tadi lah, typology yang kita dah biasa dengan cognitive process dimension ni. Now we go further on this other dimension, but you don't have to freak out. We try to piggyback on satu satu assessment kejap lagi. Okay. Alright, so workable example.
Amalina, I think that very good if we can pick up there are
Question
few, there are questions and daripada
boleh
TS
Doktor.
GS Dr. Arniza Suhana, adakah test dan quiz tidak memerlukan rubrik? Biasanya rubrik hanya soft skill assessment, test dan rubrik hanya dilihat dari standard JSUB. So I think that when we talk about whether the test and quizzes, is it really need a rubric or not, it's depending on the writing, on the types of questions. So meaning that kalau you punya writing item you tu MCQ, fill in the blank ataupun that one you can have the answer scheme. Tapi if you have the test and quizzes, for example contohnya macam open book test, I think that you can have the rubrics to assess the students' ability. All right. So I think that it's depending on what kind of question that you ask to the students. Zurina Matzain, is it ethical? It's called ethical reasoning, the cognitive part which has impact to one actions. I think that when we talk about ethical reasoning, I think that we should look at how can we address on the quantitative and qualitative reasoning. So I think that these are the things that we should emphasize because of I think that normally we are too focused on the quantitative reasoning instead of qualitative reasoning. And I think that this one is a very good topic to discuss, I think, because of how can we promote and how can we practice to dwell with this both approach, because of this both approach need a very empirical and scientific approach on how can we provide with a very good solution. Okay. And
I think if saya boleh mencela, Doktor, I think this ethical reasoning is much associated with argument. Because we wanted to see the premise where it comes from. Ethical is something very factual. Dia adalah benda yang benar. But when we have various of premise, so how they are going to project that thing pun boleh jadi empirical. Tapi I just throw my thoughts here. The form of argument dengan ethical tu boleh bersama.
I think it's a good one. I think that this is how can we start off to think on the dimensions of looking at the reasoning part. So maksudnya we are not looking. Yes, we know that we are having the problem solving, but how can we see that the reasoning can be throughout quantitative, qualitative, ethical. And I think that this one is very good to discuss about it. All right, and I think that there are one more questions from Norliana Muhammad Sazali. In developing a rubric, do we need to follow certain? Do we need to follow the criteria in ICGPA, or we need to find other alternative from other institution and whatnot. So I think that you can have your own operation definition, or you can have your own interpretation. I think that as long as you fulfill the minimum requirement description from the MQF 2.0 on how you want to deliberate it more, depending on how you want to think about it. I think that there are always a flexibility to find the best. I think that maybe you can use the ICGPA criteria, maybe boleh pakai SGB, tak ada masalah, but if you want to have more, I think that you can have it, no problem. I think that because of we need to use our academic wisdom and belief, because of we do believe that every single program have their own kata apa needs and requirement on addressing the thinking process. Saya suka dengan komen daripada computational analysis which Harul Fitri ni, dia kata, in my opinion, we need to have a certain criteria to design our rubric. Yes, great, betul. But what I try to show to you here is the very generic one. And in engineering, we have an engineering board that regulates the needs of the engineering graduates to perform at the end of the program. Okay, I just want to bring you to look at a different perspective. Alright, so normally kita memang akan ada rubrik untuk kursus, betul? And then maybe kalau ada 45 kursus, kita ada lebih kurang, kalau misal katalah kita ada 45 kursus, kemungkinan besar kita ada 40 ataupun 30 rubrik yang mungkin berfokuskan kepada kognitif, yang mungkin berbeza-beza. What if kalau program can develop a one single rubric that address all years and all semesters, meaning that you have the standard rubric to measure this competency, and this competency you can set the minimum requirement, the moderate requirement, and the high requirement to see the progress of the students towards on the thinking process. Kalau kita boleh buat yang ini, I do believe that kita akan ada a proper monitoring to assess our student cognitive ability. Alright, so I think that this one is the one step forward to look on how does the rubric not only to cater at course level but also at program level. Okay, and I think that is a very good way if we can have a kind of maybe a little research on your related in your related fields to see the importance or the essential requirement for the thinking process. Sebab saya percaya bahawa engineering, you have your own thinking process. I do believe that business and management, social sciences, science and health, they have their own thinking process. But how can we get all of this information and try to share the best practice? And I think that it will benefit most of the people that love ataupun it can be benefit to all of us to understand, oh rupanya ada banyak potensi-potensi untuk melihat thinking skills ini. So I kata itu adalah perkara ataupun benda yang patut kita explore, and I hope that this webinar dia akan menjadi macam starting point lah to let all the faculties members, all the academicians to think about it. Alright, and dan ada sikit lagi, nak baca juga sikit satu lagi, TS dan
Baca
Dr.
tak apa.
Amalina. Okay, I think
sebab
that
this platform is for this course, it is good that we can see others discipline as well. So when we
betul.
have a lots of others discipline punya thinking thoughts on assessment and rubric, we can go back to our faculty and discuss it for the matter like Dr. Sharul Fitri highlighted here. Maybe you can take up to again TS Dr. Amiza before
betul.
proceed.
TS Dr. Amiza ni dia kata, I think that the biggest problem is preparing rubric on effective domain like social ethics, entrepreneurial, managerial. I hope BPA can give more training and talk regarding on that. Don't worry, for next month we have a 3 workshop, and ada 3 workshop yang kita akan conduct. The first workshop is where we are talking about the service learning. They are using a lot of effective domain. And also I think that for the next coming workshop juga kita akan sentuh juga berkaitan dengan how does our lecturers do their psychomotor assessment in the classroom. InsyaAllah yang itu kita dah ada dalam planning kita dan itu akan berlaku pada bulan hadapan. Yang penting you all subscribe, like, turn on bell tu, because of every month kita akan ada konten-konten baru dan kita akan kongsikan konten-konten baru tu untuk semua warga akademik kita. Alright, and a little bit more, Amalina, Dr. Syamsul, I mentioned this ethical reasoning is an agreement with your point that ethical conduct begin on how she or he think about it. Our discussion about thinking process. Yeah. Alright. So itu daripada Zurina Matnin. Alright. Amar, boleh teruskan.
Doctor, maybe you can take another one from
Yes.
Dr. Safarina Ramli.
Dr. Safarina, which one? Tak nampak.
Just below Encik Syarul tadi.
Just below Encik Syahrul.
Uh-uh.
Okay, alright. Okay, I prefer rubric saying student mention all 5 concept, 5 mark, kurang satu konsep, tolak 1 marks, rather than student showing understand, give good 5 and poor 1. Yes, betul. It's depending on how details your descriptors. There are some descriptors provide a standard and condition. So if your descriptors are the elements standard and condition, it's easy for you to determine the difference between students to another students. So meaning that kalau you punya rubric orang kata apa, details, have all the criteria, have all the standards, lagi senang lah, because of memang betul kadang-kadang ada rubrik tu dia sangat superficial, dia sangat kata apa, dia sangat ringkas sangat. So kadang-kadang bila kita nak tanda tu, antara kita nak tanda satu dengan dua tu, kita macam mana satu nak tanda, satu kedua,
Kita
satu
pula
kedua.
rasa macam apa semantik dia ni.
Ya kan, jadi misal kata kalau kita ada perasaan macam tu waktu kita tanda rubrik, I think that that rubrik need to be improved. Sebab bila kita tanda rubrik ataupun bila kita bagi sesuatu yang berkaitan dengan rubrik ni, they allow us to give a good decision making lah. Maksudnya kalau satu, dua, tiga, empat, lima. Alright, so dia tak boleh in between, kecuali kalau you punya measurement skills you gunakan range. Sebab itu kadang-kadang bila kita buat rubrics, the skills of measurement is very important. Kan ada orang suka pakai yang interval 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ada orang dia suka pakai range 1 hingga 3, 4 hingga 6, 7 hingga 10. Kan, jadi each pemilihan scale of measurement juga memainkan peranan yang penting selain daripada descriptor. Alright. Okay, that's it.
Okay, alright. So we are going to see another a workable example for quality of solution rubrics in assignment. So this one, saya cuba menjawab lah. Saya cuba tunjukkan pada Dr. Erniza regarding your questions tadi, rubrics ni dipakai boleh sesuai untuk soft skills. Okay. So this is example from my class lah. Student saya solve this mathematical problem here. Now, it triggers me when we go abruptly into online learning. When you give the students assignment, they have really high tendency on meniru, simply copy jawapan kawan yang lain, right? And because of the nature of mathematical solving, you susah nak trace balik. Kalau programming tu mungkin you boleh trace lah the way students susun dia punya algorithm kan. Walaupun mathematical pun you boleh detect the way students susun dia punya algorithm jawapan, but susah untuk you directly appoint, oh this student punya method, no, it's because they are going towards the same equations, and then we taught them the same concept, and they have the access to YouTube punya problem solving yang banyak. So how are we going to have this kind of more robust assessment? Okay, so simply kalau kita tanda by end product, okay, by end product, of course kita akan tanda jawapan akhir dia dapat sama ke tidak dengan skema jawapan kan. So we wanted to see how rubrics can help in this manner. Okay, so probably we can have these sorts of problem solving process. Okay, so we wanted to see how they identify the problem, problem analysis and synthesis, solution generations. Okay, so this one is more on empirical. right? So you have the first, let's say, identifications. Did they classify the problem? Maksudnya you secara as a whole you tengok skrip jawapan tu daripada jauh ke kan? Did they be able to classify in one way? Kalau they capable, how they classify that in group type? This is very subject matter lah. I believe semua kita adalah content expert, so you can see throughout that thing lah. Okay, so problem analysis, applying equation and method. How capable to use how they use the accurate equation method, right? Because sometimes in order for you to find this one, maybe you ada another equations, this one another equation. Sometimes student dia ada tendency untuk simplify the equations, alright? And then simply pakai je macam tu. So how are the quality and the capability of students using that equations? So what I put in this third column here is the operational definitions, okay, based on problem solving process yang kita try to assess. And this one can be in empirical manner. Maksudnya you boleh letaklah 1, 2, 3 level of quality tadi tu. Okay. Maksudnya ditunjuk satu-satu steps ke. I cannot directly suggest because it's very based on the disciplines that kita berada lah. Okay. But this is one form of yang kita boleh buat to assess the quality. So let's say the assignment is 20%. Maybe we can have tap in 5% out of that problem that they solve lah. Okay. So this is how we try to tap in a more structured assignment using rubrics. Okay. Dr. Syamsul ada nak tambah?
Tak apa, you can proceed dulu, tak apa.
Oh, okay, alright.
Right.
So next, workable examples, we have projects of final year project. Okay, we wanted to see quality of end product solutions. Okay, this is saya tak bercadang untuk go through deeper because this one is what we already used to. Okay, we see the end product, apa yang kita nak, and it's very again discipline and context matters lah. So but in general, the rubrics, okay, the quality of solutions of the rubric, it should capable to determine all performance characteristic lah yang you nak letakkan. Okay, and then capable to identify required performance. I think this is align with tadi ada yang sebutkan konsep yang betul atau tidak kan. Okay, capable to select material design properties using cognitive tools yang bersesuaian. I believe like Dr. Syamsul sebutkan tadi, different disciplines are going to have a different cognitive tools. Mungkin some of us are going to use Ishikawa diagram atau SWOT analysis, or some of us are going to have a TRIZ method, some things like that. Okay. And then capable to synthesize material properties with performance characteristics. Okay, so let's say end product tu, material yang kita gunakan tu, how dia communicate with our performance characteristic. Okay, whether the student capable to select specific material, and is it the calculations selections tools use variety ataupun tepat. Okay, so this is the kind of quality that we try to embed dalam rubrics untuk specifically project reports. Okay, this is specifically tapping on the end products lah. Okay, so we have one example here. Maybe we 1 minute for you to read first. Okay, again this is also in project reports but more on architecture design. Alright, so I just wanted to show you another forms of project reports from another discipline. So, but again, they are using the same form of project reports lah. Maybe you can scan this QR code here, and it will bring you, till this document. Okay, you may scan this QR code. and it will give you, it will bring you to this, I have this problem solving value rubrics here. Okay. Kalau, okay. So, example yang architecture design tadi, right? This is one of the problem solving examples of rubrics yang mungkin boleh digunakan secara general lah. Maybe on the potential solutions, you have a certain tools, so you akan ada sub criteria lagi, right, di bawah ni, which is really depends on the construct that you have lah. Okay. Kalau tak boleh, tak tempat tadi, saya buka balik slide saya sekejap Right, so you can scan on the link, scan on the QR code. It will give you to, it will lead you to the resources that I shared on my Google Drive. Kalau nak access kena pakai UiTM punya email ya. Okay, so next we have, we wanted to see cognitive skills.
Amalina, you tunjuk balik yang QR code tadi, ada peserta kita yang perlukan sedikit masa untuk kod tersebut.
Okay.
QR code.
Sekejap Alright. Doktor nak take comments on ni, on the YouTube?
Ya, itulah ada yang kata thanks Dr. Syamsul daripada Dr. Erniza. Awesome, we are currently do a compilation of rubric for all 11 PLOs from Google searching and also use for curriculum review. And it's good to publish a books, a rubric like ICJPA book. Yes, we are currently we are currently have all the data, and also we try our best to publish MQF 2.0 rubric, and this webinar a part of our medium to get some feedback from the participants. And inshallah, this is a way to go, because of we try our best to cater a different fields of what we call different field of studies, because of I think that when it comes into a generic in giving our staff example rubric, I think that is quite difficult, and we try our best to cater based on the field. We try to cater the different needs, and we want to have a rubric that can refer by many academicians. So we want to ensure that sekurang-kurangnya kita boleh orang kata apa, we have our own mall, looking at okay, these are the things yang kita nak tengok. We have our own malls yang kita nak, kalau boleh begitulah. I think that instead of menggunakan apa yang orang ada, mungkin juga kita boleh tanya ramai pakar-pakar yang ada dekat dalam fakulti kita ataupun dekat dalam UiTM ni, untuk bantu kita juga nanti to develop a very comprehensive MQF 2.0 rubric. And so far we have the drafting, we have all the drafting, just a matter of we have to go more deeper and try our best to publish the best rubric for all UiTM staff members. Tapi tu ada kawan kita daripada universiti luar, QR code tadi tu tak boleh akses. Jadi I think that kalau misal kata Amalina boleh
Nanti saya revoke balik.
By
end of
kalau
this
boleh
session.
buka, then untuk semua dah baguslah. Alright.
Okay, alright.
Okay, selain daripada tu ada apa lagi yang saya tak cover? I think that all covered good. Okay, Amalina.
Okay. So next we are going to see a workable example dari case study. We wanted to see quality juga, tapi kali ini case study. Right. On case study, ada banyak ada diverse discipline. I try to show sebahagiannya dekat sini. So we have teacher decision making, childhood, emotional disability, ecotourism, public health, population policy. So I think on a case study mungkin business field, pentadbiran awam, sebab UiTM ada banyak sangat courses program kan. So this is just what I can think through lah. Mungkin kalau dalam courses like program Fakulti Sains Binaan Binaan dan Ukur Bahan dan juga engineering, you have these kinds of environmental issue ataupun classes for ethical classes. So maybe ada certain case study yang kita akan pakai lah, right? Okay, so why case study? With case study, students got the chance to analyze how others solving problems. So in this case, apart from kita suruh bagi students problem untuk dia solve, they need to see juga benchmark on how quality problem being solved. So kalau kita selama hari ni dah terbiasa bagi student new problem, it's like sort of innovation punya problem. Why not we try to shift a bit, piggyback a bit our practice into having a case study as our assignment, right? Ini bagi disiplin yang tak biasa lah, right? Disiplin yang biasa mungkin you can try out on you can discuss with those yang tak biasa pakai, right? I believe that business study yang selalu pakai case study. I'm not sure, but I have heard one webinar before how they use case study dekat dalam Emerald punya Emerald punya sources to solve the problem. Okay, so the good thing is that macam tu lah, they need to see the benchmark ataupun how others yang memang well versed in solving this particular problem, jadi dia boleh see the progress between diri dia dengan another fine example. Okay, so quality of solution rubrics in case study. Okay, bila kita nak develop the rubrics for case study ni, ada kolom sebelah kiri ni suggested construct lah yang kita boleh pakai. For example, the quality of information sources cited. Okay, does the source of information report unknown, well established or internationally recognized, right? Ni biasanya mungkin dekat references ke kalau di provide kan. Okay, so the constraint analysis, despite of kita tulis je provide more than 3 references, provide more than 5 references, mungkin we can go into this, we can shift into this kind of paradigm. Secara tak langsung, it will force the student because student mengikut what are we assessing. Okay, if they see this rubrics and this criteria that they are going to be assessed, they definitely will follow the assessment that going to be assessed. So in this sense, bila delivery kita tu dengan assessment kita tu well communicate, dia akan benefit pada the students lah. So they know dekat mana yang acceptable information yang dia boleh cited. So this in regulations boleh juga kita embed together digital skills punya rubrik petang ni nanti. So by now we dah boleh we can see that in assessing students' thinking skills, we cannot have one form of assessment. It has to be, that's why tadi bila awal-awal tadi kita buat analytical punya reflections, we can see that most of us have moved beyond final exam and test. So with that assignment, projects, we can tap in this kind of lots of skills yang kita boleh embed together. For instance tadi, dalam problem solving, kita ada problem identification. So kita kena identify dulu information mana kita nak dapat. We tap in with the digital skills pula yang petang ni. Okay. And then the constraint analysis, does the solution laid out consist of if any social, political, and economic constraint? Okay, boleh tak students to tap in based on the case study dia baca tu, boleh tak dia nampak constraint-constraint yang ada kan? Alright, and then economic feasibility, relevance of political implications. So I think, what's your comment on this case study, Dr. Syamsul? What kind of courses yang directly impacted by using this kind of case study format?
I think that the case study can be applied for all program. Kan? Jadi I do believe that the all program also they have their own case study. Just a matter of on how they are addressed according to the field. I think that the most interesting part here is how can we address a very authentic case study. And this authentic case study will allow us to assess their real cognitive ability. That's the reason why kadang-kadang saya lihat dan saya melihat juga beberapa potensi yang contohnya kan, we have our SDG curriculum mapping, right? So
Yes.
how does we use this a part of our case study? And how does this SDG can be integrated in the case study and allow us to assess the thinking process? So kadang-kadang we have all of these resources, just a matter of how can we integrate all of this as a one package. Kan, kadang-kadang kita melihat benda tu, orang kata kita lihat benda tu orang kata
Compartmentalized.
compartmentalize. Kita tengok benda tu berbeza-beza satu-satu kan. Okay, SDG lain, assessment lain, delivery lain.
Betul, betul.
But again, if kalau kita duduk betul-betul and we revisit and we start to think about how can I integrate and complement each other, I think that the authenticity tu akan jelas nampak di situ. Alright, jadi kalau kita, sebab itu saya kata case study ni kalau kita lihat kepada disiplin dia pelbagai, dia banyak kan. Dan ada juga kalau kita kata bidang health and science, dia punya case study dia more on the clinical. Kalau education dia punya case study dia different pula. Jadi kalau engineering dia punya case study dia banyak kepada complex problem solving dan sebagainya. I think it's okay, never mind. You can go ahead with your approach. But how to embed your case study with in contohnya dengan SDG macam saya katakan tadi kan, dengan perkara-perkara yang kita, orang kata apa, we can contribute back to the society lah, senang kata macam ni kan, is a real one lah kan. Jadi kalau kita boleh buat benda macam tu, it was very interesting kan.
Yes.
Alright.
Okay, so I'm going
Kalau
to...
kita tengok juga kan, tapi itulah bila kita kata case study ni sebenarnya,
Mhm.
kita tak boleh gunakan konten yang kita ajar kepada pelajar. So we need to contextualize the content. That's the challenge on creating a good case study. So
I think having said that, because you said the context kan, you can read from the comment section dekat live chat tu, we have one from Health Science punya discipline.
Yeah. Alright, case study is common untuk health subject, macam-macam drama pesakit ada. Right, it's a real world kan, but bila kerja besok pun memang macam itulah ragamnya kan. Itu saya kata tadi, there are some of the field dia memang dia punya case study dia tu memang the condition itself dah memang, the setting itself dah memang begitu. Tapi ada some of the case study dia tak boleh dapat that kind of condition, they have to, orang kata apa, simulate the situation. Jadi itu yang saya katakan tadi, how can we daripada konteks convert in and contextualize the case study tu, saya kata cabaran untuk seorang pensyarah memikirkan perkara tersebut kan. Jadi itu yang saya yakin kalau kita boleh contextualize, kaitkan dengan beberapa variable-variable yang lain, it's gonna be a good case study. Ada orang Amalina, ada orang sangat berminat dengan you punya PDF yang tadi tu. Saya rasa macam ni, nanti kita akan letakkan dekat dalam description, nanti you boleh download. Boleh tak? Nanti kita akan kumpulkan slide PowerPoint dan juga
Okay.
PDF file tu tadi kita letak dekat dalam description dan semua rakan-rakan yang lain boleh dapat akses tersebut. Alright, so apa sahaja bahan yang ada pada hari ni kita kongsikan bersama dengan rakan-rakan akademik kita. Alright? Okay, Amalina.
Boleh Doktor. Right, so we are going to continue with another suggested form of assessment. Masih lagi dalam assignment, but now kita nak pergi sedikit kita nak alih sikit to metacognitions and regulations. Okay, so but before that, mungkin education people and psychology health, they are already and also child punya ECCE ke, they know this kind of metacognition terms, but probably most of us have just heard on these metacognitions. It is actually thinking about thinking lah, ataupun an awareness of understanding of one own thought process. Maybe apa tu, sometimes kalau mungkin lah kalau nak bagi example lah, macam contoh kita ada problem nak kena selesaikan ni. We have a deadline to meet. And then kita tengah fikir macam mana nak solvekan task ni. Lepas tu tiba-tiba kita macam, tapi macam mana aku tahu benda tu so that is what metacognition is. Okay. You start to think, sebab thinking, cognition is thinking. Meta is about talking about the thinking lah. Okay, it's like physics and metaphysics kalau dalam humanities kan. Okay, so by evidence-based study in educational setting, metacognition ni kita boleh bahagi kepada dua lah. Satu knowledge of cognition, satu lagi self-regulations. And this metacognition dia akan macam Dr. Syamsul tunjukkan tadi lah, learning apa tadi Doktor? Typology
Typology.
we are going to
Ini bahasa
go
baru untuk semua orang hari ni typology of learning outcome focus on the cognitive skill.
Yes.
Right.
Alright.
Kenapa kita sentuh typology itu? Because of kita nak tahu asal usul ilmu itu kan. I think that kita selalu sebut pasal kognitif tapi kita tak tahu asal usul itu. So asal usul tu lah yang kita cuba kongsikan macam mana tiba-tiba penting sangat kognitif ni kan. Jadi kajian pasal kognitif ni dah lama sangat dijalankan kan. Jadi itu yang kita katakan the exploration of knowledge is always kata apa, benda yang kita kena discover almost every day. And Dr. Safarina Ramli tanya, apa beza rubrik dengan skema jawapan? Apa beza rubrik dengan skema jawapan? Alright. Boleh disamakan? Dia berbeza. Fungsi dia berbeza. Skema jawapan, fungsi dia berbeza. Rubrik, fungsi dia berbeza. I think that nanti saya rasa ini pun nak kena highlight jugalah perkara ni. I think that apakah yang membezakan, ada yang kata okey, ada contoh orang kata okey, skema jawapan dia punya purpose and function dia lain, rubrik purpose and function dia lain, ada juga yang panggil sebagai performance indicator, itu purpose dan function dia juga lain. Alright, so mungkin kita boleh bincang kejap lagi lah berkaitan dengan hari kita bagi pada Amalina dulu. Alright.
I think cuma saya nak sebutkan di sini juga, takut nanti saya terlupa, mungkin Dr. Syamsul boleh ingatkan. Mungkin this is the things yang kita skema jawapan dengan rubrics ni mungkin kita boleh tag in juga dengan deductive inductive thinking, boleh ke?
Boleh.
And then when we have skema jawapan, the inclusivity, the issue is inclusivity. Tak apa, yang tu nanti kita tap on dekat hujung. So I'm going to proceed with my slides here. Okay, one thing, ini just sampingan je lah. One thing that I think so fascinating about metacognition is that I was surprised why is that students dia tak boleh go beyond meta memory. Remember tadi keadaan dalam otak tadi kan, awal-awal tadi the comics that we have after SPM, okay, semua nota-nota daripada dalam brain tu kena keluar. Okay, so I was thinking about that thing, macam mana students boleh meta memory dia sekejap sangat. Okay, and then macam mana untuk retain the memory? I thought retaining memory could be from practice. That one is true, but it cannot go beyond professional level. Sebab when we go into developmental process, we need to have a transfer. We need to have the transfer. That's why bila SPM nak bawa ke diploma nak bawa ke degree, we very limited to see the transfer to happen because students are still stuck dalam meta memory. The way we assess the students pun meraihkan meta memory more rather than regulate their learning, what they have come to understand so far. Okay, so metacognitions in part dalam konteks tu macam tu lah. Alright. Okay, so we have two parts dekat sini. Again, ni link yang sama lah, boleh scan QR code. Alright. So kita ada metacognition ni biasanya dalam assessment kita bahagi dua, knowledge of cognition dengan regulation. Knowledge ni kita nak tengok level knowledge dimension student ni ada dekat mana. Adakah dia setakat boleh declare je, setakat boleh sebutkan aja, setakat boleh categorizekan aja ke, ataupun daripada knowledge yang dia ada tu dia boleh set up procedure dah. Okay, they know that this is procedure A, this is procedure B, ataupun they are starting with procedure B and then they are going back to procedure A, right? And then also conditional knowledge. Okay, so the example that I'm going to show next is the one that I learned from PDF document 2 ni lah. Okay, if you see PDF document 2 tu pasal metakognitif, right? Okay, I hope you sempat scan Okay. So this is the assignment that I give to my students. Again, the same assignment actually yang tadi tu. Tapi ada lagi detail lah. Format tetap assignment tapi soalan dia lain lah, lagi detail. So, but problem is masih lagi involving calculation. So, saya tak puas hati lah kan bila students come up with the calculations. They simply, memanglah dia boleh buat kalau kita ada skema jawapan tu macam tadi yang saya tunjuk tu. Of course, kita akan tick je lah end result student tu dapat apa kan. Okay. And this example is more towards things yang empirical lah, yang susah sikit untuk kita set the setting untuk tidak meniru dalam keadaan ODL sekarang ni Okay. So what I did, lepas saya dah bagi, kalau you tengok dari example dokumen PDF 02 tu, that one dia buat di sekolah. And the question is kind of tedious jugalah, panjang sangat tu dia punya muka surat tu. Okay. Takut mungkin sebab untuk sekolah level jadi dia terpaksa bagi instruction tu very detail macam tu. But for learner yang university learner mungkin boleh simplify in this form lah. So again, I give the students assignment matematik untuk dia solvekan that problem secara empirical. But then I add on this kind of questions for them to ponder upon. Like I said, thinking about thinking. How did they derive to that solutions, right? So in this sense, instead of kita, ini saya lah, instead of saya pukul rata saja student tu meniru, when I develop this rubrics, it gives me dia selamatkan saya jugalah sebab saya tak ada this kind of saya menyelamatkan diri saya daripada tak berlaku adil lah pada student. Sebab kita kadang-kadang geram kan tengok apa solution dia sama ni, sampai kadang-kadang kalau mathematics tu kawan dia tulis dekat tepi-tepi kertas tu, dia pun tulis kat tepi-tepi kertas tu sebab dia tak tahu. Dia ingatkan kena lukis tepi-tepi juga macam tu kan, dia tiru sebulat-bulatnya. Okay, so when I have this set of questions, then they starts to see how well the students understand the subject matter. Okay, so in doing so, saya pakai rubrik yang ada knowledge dimension ni. Okay, so you can see yang bulat-bulat ni adalah 4 je item yang, 4 je construct yang saya nak, 4 je operation yang saya nak tahu. Sebab that thing portion marker dia besar untuk calculation. So tapi saya nak make sure saya tanda student saya dengan quality. Okay, so saya buat macam ni lah. I just wanted to tap, betul ke at the end of this activity lesson, dia betul dah dapat this kind of factual things. Okay, so bila I just wanted to show you can create a quick rubric pakai quickrubric.com ni. Okay, so saya letak je dulu apa yang saya nak, right? Student tu boleh dari segi factual knowledge, apa yang dia boleh summarize. Okay, saya go back balik tadi. Sorry, sekejap. Alright, daripada rubrics tadi, saya nak level of understanding ni, dia mesti state facts and the facts must be in summarizing that form. Okay, so how they summarize that thing? Right, so that's my operation definitions lah. Okay, and then what about the procedure that they did? Okay, procedure ni saya rasa kalau dia orang dapat clarify clearly pun okay dah. Okay, so I did the clarifications here. And then I have this metacognitive construct, and I think I want them to be able to acknowledge their own biases. Okay, sebab kalau nanti saya tak upload soalan ni dekat dalam saya punya Google Drive tu nanti saya upload. Sebab soalan ketiga tu saya tanya dia, dia rasa how well dia punya solution tu betul. Macam mana dia rasa kat mana yang dia rasa dia akan dapat kurang markah. So dia akan acknowledge kelemahan diri dia dekat mana, the biasness of that. If they copy that cell, you will sense dia simply tulis salin je balik apa yang kawan dia fikirkan. Okay, it's not about diri dia. Okay, in fact, saya tak dapat nak ada journal, mungkin saya akan update lah nanti dekat dalam Google Drive link tu. They did assess on this impact of students dia buat self assessing. Okay, so bila dia tahu this kind of rubric, dia baca balik soalan tu, so dia tahu this sendiri triggering thoughts dia balik tau. How come I come into this kind of conclusion, kenapa aku buat macam ni? We just want to initiate the thinking process. Daripada problem solving yang simple je assignment tu tadi kan. Calculate satu soalan, dua soalan je macam tu. Okay. But because of this example brings 20% of marks, so saya dan saya tak puas hati kalau student terus sebab I cannot measure dekat mana dia punya grasp tu, understanding of grasp tu kan. So I come up with this thing. And this one, if you want to read further on this paper yang saya adapt, ada dalam Google Drive tu, item 02. Okay, I think
I do, Amalina. That's the reason why there are maybe some of them have a little clarity lah kot in terms of what differentiate between marking scheme, right, dengan rubric. So the main difference that is when we as the lecturers is grading lah. So meaning that kalau kita tengok kepada marking schemes tu biasanya dia akan guide you to enter the number according according to the according to the specific answers kan. Tetapi kalau kita bercerita tentang rubric, biasanya rubric has preset a level of each criteria that the lecturers or the teacher can select from when the marking that criterion. Jadi itu yang kita kata kalau marking scale ni biasanya dia guided lah, dia bimbing kita. Okay, nak yang mana satu boleh bagi A, yang kalau misalnya kata markah tu satu, bagi satu lah, kalau dua lah, kalau kurang berapa nak kurang. Tetapi kalau rubric is different because of rubric ni kita tengok dia punya level of competency dan itu yang kita kata tadi, rubric ni dia kena boleh membezakan. Kan? So sebab itu kita kata, sebab itu ada scholar kata, is it you want to find the right answer or the best answer? Betul tak? Kalau you nak find the right answer, the approach dia lain. Tapi if you want to find the best answer, approach dia lain. Jadi kalau kita lihat beberapa komen daripada rakan-rakan kita juga kan, saja je saya nak ambil.
Dr. Syamsul, saya just nak selit sebab you mention about best answer, not the right answer. I think dua komen daripada bawah, daripada Dr. Halim Ghaffar. I think that is what it meant by having a best answers rather than the correct answers. Is it? What's your comment on that?
Dia kata kalau tengok rubrik ada 3 scale, 1.3 dan 5, macam mana nak apply yang tengah-tengah tu, macam kan ada grey area. Sebab itu kalau sebab itu kita kata normally we go for the absolute lah kan. Macam contoh macam yang rubrik ditunjuk ni kan, beginner nak bagi satu je point, nak bagi 3, nak bagi 5. Tapi kita tak boleh halang ada orang nak buat satu dengan range tersebut. Tapi itulah cabaran dia adalah untuk membezakan di antara satu dengan yang lain itu. Sebab tu kalau tanya saya, my personal opinion, this is my personal opinion, I would rather to have the absolute numbers, absolute interval untuk memudahkan saya memberikan perbezaan di antara satu dengan yang lain. Alright, tapi macam saya katakan tadi, somehow or other kita tak boleh dictate because of this one is based on the preference juga. Okay, jadi I like juga tengok kepada beberapa perkara juga. Alright, antaranya kalau kita lihat is it metacognition means for higher level thinking only for final year? Tak juga sebenarnya. I think that macam saya katakan tadi, if you want to nurture the thinking process, kita kena embed benda ni secara holistik lah, menyeluruh. Just a matter of how much proportion of higher order thinking level ini nak diselitkan di dalam kursus ataupun program masing-masing. That's the reason why we need to have the table of specification for the program base. Kan, year 1 berapa banyak portion lower order and high order you nak bagi, year 2 berapa, year 3 berapa, so at least you can monitor and design the proper monitoring system on looking at how much percentage and proportion of higher order thinking and lower order thinking skills has been addressed to your program. Sebab tu daripada awal tadi saya kata, instead of looking on the course level rubric, we also can see as a
At the program
program
level.
based
Yeah.
rubric. Itu yang saya kata, this is something that we need to start with. Dan ada juga yang kata kadang-kadang tengok rubrik degree dah macam PhD. Dah macam master. Betul? I admit, berdasarkan kepada saya makan saya banyak dokumen. Betul? Ada juga yang kadang-kadang level rubrik itu kadang-kadang melampaui daripada keadaan ataupun keupayaan pelajar itu yang sebenar. Sebab tu saya kata kemungkinan besar juga pensyarah ini tidak melihat apakah kriteria yang perlu dicapai oleh pelajar itu berdasarkan kepada proficiency level mereka masing-masing. Kan? Dan I do agree juga, macam contoh Dr. Harini dia kata apa, my opinion skema jawapan is quite rigid, it can be measure HOTS but not HOTS. Kan, jadi itu antara pandangan rakan-rakan kita kan. Jadi pada masa yang sama juga kita boleh lihat juga adakah bila kita buat case study, assignment, project question should be developed with JSUB ataupun JSUP. Is it necessary? If you want to have the quality control to validate your content, to validate your instruments, untuk memastikan dia what have you taught and yang itu yang you test, semestinya kena ada JSUB dan JSP. Dan itu juga yang terkandung dalam polisi pentaksiran dan pilihan akademik UiTM. Kita kata apa? Kita kata mesti ada JSUB, JSP dan JSU untuk memastikan setiap penilaian itu dikawal kualiti, baik daripada segi integriti dia, baik daripada segi kesaksamaan dia, baik daripada segi kesahan dia dan juga kebolehpercayaan dia. Jadi, I think itu yang saya katakan, bila kita bercerita dalam konteks, kalau kita bercerita dalam konteks assessment ni, selain kita kata validity, reliability, fairness and consistency, the last number one yang saya nak tambah is the integrity. So, if you want to ensure the quality, ada 4, tak ada integrity, sebab integrity ni melibatkan you as a lecturers and also the students. Jadi, sebab itu benda ni kita tak boleh buat hari ni saya cakap besok dia boleh jadi, tak. Benda ni dia kena melalui proses and we have to educate ourselves and we also need to educate our students. Kan? Kalau kita kata why our student nowadays berani untuk meniru? Kan? Kenapa dia berani untuk meniru? Kan? Kalau kita nak kata, okay, boleh saya kata I can point, I boleh je point blaming to the lecturer, mungkin you sunyi soalan tak bagus dan sebagainya, tapi itu tak menyelesaikan masalah.
Betul, it takes two.
It's not solving the problem if you are blaming each other.
Yeah.
What we need to do here is how can you solve the problems? Alright, how can you solve the problems? Macam mana lecturers and students play their part and also ensure that the integrity become, orang kata apa, become your priority lah. Sebab tu saya selalu cakap integrity is our task and duty lah kan. Tak kira lah dia pensyarah ke, dia pelajar ke, integrity is number one. Alright. Okay, I know HOT is cognitive domain. If not mistaken, it's also possible to use HOT questions to evaluate effective domain by using reflective writing. Boleh juga you pakai case study, contohnya you buat case study, ada combinations of cognitive and effective domain dalam satu assignment. Boleh, tak ada masalah. That one we call as integration. Kita kata sebagai integrated assessment that cover two domain. Boleh buat, just a matter of we need able to distinguish waktu bila nak tengok kognitif, waktu bila nak tengok efektif. Alright? Okay? Amalina?
I think I'm going to take one questions dekat atas
Ya.
tadi tertinggal
Ada nombor
daripada
satu.
Dr. Mazliana
Dr.
Zainan.
Mazliana.
I created a rubric based on metacognition to assess reflective writing. Am I on the right track? Yes, yes.
Yes,
In
you
fact,
are.
I think banyak literature about metacognitive is on learning, reading comprehension. Betul tak, Doktor?
Ya, betul.
Especially on English, apa dipanggil tu? EFL learners. English
Ya,
learners, second language learners tu
second
kan?
language.
Ya,
Betul.
ya.
Sebenarnya, Amalina, my PhD is actually looking at these matters. Reflective writing is my sub-component dalam my PhD.
Okay,
Memang
so Dr.
betul.
Mazliana is asking the right question. Okay, the
The
floor
right
is
question
yours,
is very right
Dr.
question.
Syamsul. The floor is yours now.
Ya, sebab apa? Reflective writing require analytical thinking and problem solving. And kalau tak ada analytical thinking, you tak boleh buat reflective writing. Dan kena ingat, waktu kita buat reflective thinking dengan kata apa, problem solving, sebenarnya ada satu lagi skill set effective domain yang akan terlibat sama. Writing skills and also oral communication lah. So meaning that the interrelation tu memang akan berlaku. Sebab itu saya selalu percaya bahawa kalau kita buat reflective writing ni ada banyak sub komponen yang kita boleh lihat, especially kognitif dan juga efektif. Sebab tu kalau kita lihat juga reflective writing ni one of the high impact educational practices yang diamalkan hampir ke seluruh kata apa world institution lah, memang gemar menggunakan reflective writing ini. Sebab apa? Sebab keupayaan reflective writing ini tidak boleh dihasilkan dalam tempoh sehari. Dia kena by practice. Kan kalau kita nak menulis, contohnya lah kan, orang menulis diary kan. Dia tak boleh buat macam seminggu sekali. Dia kena buat hari-hari. Sama juga macam saya. I love do blogging kan. I tak boleh tak buat satu hari. I kena buat blogging tu hari-hari because of I want to strengthen my writing skills and I want to reflect more on what I'm doing. Alright? It's a little bit of the story of reflective writing.
I just want to add a bit sebab dah Alan sebut pasal reflective writing kan, because this is very interesting because this is one form of students dia nak project dia punya thoughts on writing sebab sometimes they are not good in communicating verbal, so how they put into writing because of this instant gratifications yang budaya kita ada sekarang ni. Twitter pun bagi very limited space untuk you tulis sampai you kena buat thread kan. So this kind of reflective writing practice is very useful. I just wanted to share my practice dekat dalam kelas. I do reflective writing I call it 3 minutes reflective writing right after a synchronous task, so that is just how I can assure that the students are really doing the asynchronous task. If not, susah saya nak tengok kan, are they really learning, are they understand what they are looking at the video. This one is just selingan lah untuk formative.
Betul,
I
sebenarnya
think
kalau kita lihat kepada reflective writing or reflective thinking ni sebenarnya ia juga berkait rapat dengan sesi kita petang ni kan. We talk about the digital
skills, yeah.
Betul. Sebelum you boleh come up with your reflections, you need the ability to curate and also articulate the information. You need to use the information management to allow you untuk proses all of this mass data ni.
It is interesting that
Yeah.
you pointed this out because nanti towards the end kita ada argumentation punya assessment. Dekat situ pun memang ada satulah yang akan link juga dengan webinar petang ni on again these information searches tu kan, very crucial.
Information searches. Yes. Right.
Okay.
Interesting. Go ahead Amalina. Banyak benda kita boleh bincangkan sebenarnya.
Tadi saya nak sebut tadi yang pasal English learner tadi. We have satu mungkin kalau you tak nak pakai mungkin you boleh adapt kot MARC Metacognitive Awareness Reading Instrument I think. Maybe Dr. Mazliana boleh adapt that thing and then buat sebagai rubric kot. That one is actually self-assessment tapi mungkin Boleh kan doktor kalau self-assessment tu kita ambil that criteria atau that item to have a rubric punya sort
Boleh,
level.
boleh, tak ada
Boleh kan?
masalah.
Yeah, it's just
Boleh.
the way, the form of we deliver that thing lah. Okay, so kita move to another suggested form of assessment. We have final year project and then this is problem solving process during. Saya letak during tu sebab bila kita bagi task, especially final year project or project, culture kita ni kadang-kadang kita cuma assess towards the end ataupun kalau kita pecahkan on certain weeks, kita akan try to assess the students lah, developmental progress dia macam mana kan. But most of us kadang-kadang kita go for quality end product. Kita tak tap in the problem solving process. But given the nature of ODR right now, most of us have to communicate online and then kita ada macam-macam board, ada Padlet board, ada Jamboard semua tu, macam-macam learning management system yang kita pakai. So why not we make use of that, kita piggyback, right? Kita piggyback di amalan untuk try to assess the process that ongoing, right? So that's the idea of this assessment. And I highlighted dia dengan metacognition regulation sebab kita boleh embed it together, these two rubrics. Okay, so this is an example saya took from the internet on the discussion board that the students have. Yang belakang tu adalah, I think it's a novel, pasal novel. Yang depan ni teknologi that they use. Okay. So now macam bila we talk about during the process, right, problem solving process during, so it involve the regulations of cognitions tau. So regulation of cognition ni maknanya macam mana student plan, macam mana dia monitoring dia punya understanding, macam mana dia evaluate. So all these things susah untuk kita nak nampak waktu kita dalam kelas. Okay. In fact, kalau dokumen 09 tu, if you have a look at that, I think environment yang dia pakai tu dia record that session in class. Okay. Tapi that thing is evidence based punya research lah. Tapi takkan kita nak record. It's going to be very tedious unless you wanted to come up with a research on that. So the idea is that how are we going to tap this kind of process, problem solving thinking process ni, waktu students buat the task that we give them, right? So based on the discussion board ni sebenarnya, thanks kepada learning management system yang ada ni, kita boleh visual the thought process that flows out from the students. Okay, and kita boleh scaffold that thought process as well. Contoh kita scaffold by throwing out katalah hari ni kita rasa hari ni kita plan untuk asynchronous tutorial 1 jam. So we throw out questions. Okay, we throw out questions that pertaining to scaffold the projects that they ongoing. But how are we going to monitor dia punya, how are we going to assess dia punya solving process dekat situ? So ini adalah coding yang kita boleh pakai lah, part of the coding yang kita boleh pakai based on the study that saya share dalam Google Drive tu. Dia ada identifying, of course this coding scheme ni emerge daripada activity engineering. So kalau problem solving task tu datang daripada business study, daripada health science, daripada science gunaan, it's going to be different lah. Again, when step in solving problem, dia generic, tapi the content dalam tu yang disebutkan dalam tu very subject matter. Sangat-sangat tergantung kepada disiplin. And the example that I have right now is coding scheme untuk design yang diguna pakai dalam engineering classes. Maybe because of the word design, apa-apa generic, apa-apa code program yang melibatkan design mungkin boleh ambil juga design dan ada element of solving problem. Okay, so bila students portray dekat sini kan, let's say you talk about you just throw the questions about planning. So you can start to see the students' argument. I plan to have this. So dekat situ you nampak dia punya level of planning. Right? Nanti saya akan share juga, tadi saya tak sempat nak masukkan dekat Google form tu, dia ada planning yang macam mana. Ataupun if kita nak ambil balik macam dalam Dr. Syamsul sebutkan awal tadi, when you plan to have a rubric, you need to have the operational definitions. Okay. So kalau planning tu, planning yang macam mana yang sepatutnya kena dalam konteks disiplin you. Okay. Kalau monitoring tu, monitor pakai tools apa? Contoh, monitoring dia patutnya pakai SWOT analysis contoh. Dia present tak that thing dekat board tu. Okay, so maybe you can have a rubric on that matter as well. This is to enrich the existing final year project yang kita duk buat tu. Especially bila kita dalam keadaan ODL ni, student ada tendensi untuk divert dia punya proses, okay? Tapi kita assess towards the end je. So susahlah, kita tak tahu student tu betul learn ke tidak kan? Okay?
Amalina, bila you kata to enrich tu, I think that dia memerlukan orang kata apa, a knowledge of discovery lah. So I do believe that nak enrich apa-apa pun we need to discover. Dan untuk discover tak boleh takut. Alright, so kita tak boleh takut sebab kalau kita takut to discover and then kita rely on certain orang kata apa certain kata apa certain perspective, so meaning that kita takkan move away. So that's the reason why I think that when kita dalam keadaan kita sekarang ni tengah ber-ODL kan, online learning, open and distance learning, this situation force us to enrich our approach kan. Bila kita kata enrich tadi tu, you will think on how can I access the students cognitive level ni kan. Jadi sebab tu dulu waktu mula-mula berlaku MCO, ramai kata alamak tak buat exam, boleh ke student ni?
Open book exam.
Open book boleh buat ke? Tapi hari ni kalau based on you punya survey tadi tu, is apa kata apa, is a bless lah, is a bless in disguise orang kata, sebab there must be a drive that moving us from the comfort zone untuk discover. Itu kata-kata the discovery of knowledge tu for the academician, dia takkan terhenti lah kan. So I think that I do believe that after this session, saya percayalah most of us akan cuba, I believe lepas ni you akan type metacognitive tu apa dan apa yang sesuai dengan bidang you. I nak kalau boleh habis je webinar ni kan, masing-masing dia search metacognitive in the field of business management, metacognitive in the fields of social sciences kan. Jadi these are the things yang kita kata okay, I have the idea. Kalau you ada jumpa yang best, don't forget me. Email kat saya, Dr. Syam, I jumpa something that very related, I want to
sebab kita nak enrich our knowledge as well on that matter. Betul Dr.
Don't hesitate to email me, kongsi dengan saya dan kita mungkin boleh apply yang kita boleh guna bersama. Alright, itu saja salingan.
Oh, okay. Alright, so takeaway from this form of assessment, it is so amazing bila kita, of course lah, kalau macam saya ngajar diploma level, saya tak ada variety of students. Mungkin kalau degree level dia ada variety of students kan, dia ada kematangan yang berbeza. Tapi in this study, in this task yang saya provide dalam Google Drive tu, what they found is that daripada board tu kita boleh nampak older students be able to identify more criteria. Meaning that they monitor apa yang dia tahu, apa yang dia tak tahu. We wanted to know the frequency. So bila kita buat this kinds of assessment pada, let's say kita mengajar dua students, students part 1 and then students part 3, and the element is about the same, let's say projects. So student part 1 dia buat simple project je tapi still dalam format project. Tapi student part 5, let's say part 3 or part 5 dia buat project juga tapi ada certain requirement, right? So you can see if you have the opportunity untuk mengajar kedua-dua set of students ini, you will see the way they provide their criteria. So that will give you the jawapan macam mana student monitor dia punya understanding. Okay, and then you will also see kalau older student ni they had significantly more transitions between design steps. Maksudnya this one kita berbalik-balik pada inductive deductive thinking. So you will see sometimes a novice learner ataupun kalau dalam konteks kerja novice lah. Kalau dalam konteks student ni mungkin apa tu sophomore dia panggil junior years. So dia kind of deductive. Apa pensyarah tunjuk tu itulah yang dia akan sort out balik. But difference with older students who have gone through the experience. Ingat saya kata tadi, older students dia memanglah dah melalui experience tu. Tapi dia tak boleh nak tap in tau. What kind of thinking skills yang dia dah mahir sebenarnya. Kita pun tak boleh nak conclude that thing, but we know that through experience dah ada macam tu. So when we have this kind of metacognition self-assessment, we can tap in the right form of development progress yang dia dah ada towards the end. Okay. And then older student also gather more information. Sometimes it's not just older students tau. You dalam kelas kita kadang-kadang ada 30 orang student. You can see all these formations dekat dalam tu. And then you will start to trigger your mind nak check budak ni daripada sekolah mana. Dia dah start tau datang. Dia start to think result macam mana student ni dulu. And you will surprised to see biasanya result dia orang tu tally. Cuma kita nak tahu the exact things improvement dia buat so that we can develop the students yang kurang ni pula melalui apa yang students lebih ni tahu. Okay, that's how we provide meaningful formative assessment lah. That one is on formative assessment. But we get that through this kind of form of assessment. Okay, and also different kinds of problem require different codes. So remember tadi earlier stage saya tulis ada case study problem, ada policy problem, ada macam-macam problem dekat situ kan. So it's going to have that kind of requirement lah berdasarkan itu. Okay, alright Dr. Syamsul, saya rasa maybe boleh baca komen dekat chat kot sebelum saya go sebab I think this will be my last AC argumentations.
Alright, okay. Interesting. I just want to scrolling on the chat, on the live chat ni. Menariknya ramai yang suka pakai buku SGPA. Betul, the rubric of SGPA is absolutely wonderful because of this one is has been established by all the expert around apa orang kata apa, all the expert from Malaysia lah, maksudnya orang-orang kita, and it's good to refer. Then I think that maybe there are some point is good to evolve based on that SGPA workshop pun sebenarnya, SGPA books. Saya rasa buku tu memang buku yang baik, memang buku yang wajar untuk kita rujuk, and again kita juga perlu evolve lah daripada situ. So and ada juga rakan kita macam Zulina Maknin kata, I'm also doing this, guna board, work collaborative with the students, we observe the students ability and skills seperti kita dah tetapkan dalam learning outcomes. Ini kita katakan how does the formative assessment, alright, prioritize on the learning activity, and it will also lead on how to achieve the learning outcome. Jadi hebat sebenarnya pensyarah-pensyarah kita ni sebenarnya. Dia orang tahu dah nak buat apa kan. Hari ni dia orang datang ni just to get some refresh lah kan, refresh
ataupun have some view from other discipline jugalah.
Ya, betul. Kan looking on the other disciplines, dan sebenarnya I think that I learned a lot from orang kata apa, based on the multidisciplinary approach ni, sebab bila saya buat kerja-kerja, orang kata apa, bila kita tengok assessment for the whole university and looking on the different fields of kata apa, of study, kita sebenarnya belajar each of the program have their own strength yang kadang-kadang I think that kita boleh adopt and adapt dan juga sesuaikan dengan apa, dengan kursus ataupun program kita. And dan I think mungkin kita boleh habiskan kot slide yang terakhir ni mungkin.
Oh, okay.
Alright.
Okay, ada satu ni daripada Dr. Zurainis, maaf saya mungkin terlepas info tentang
Ha.
metakognitif dan learning style. Bagaimana metakognitif boleh cater different learning style, kinestetik, auditory dan visual. Adakah perlu rubrik yang berbeza? I think on kinestetik, auditory dan visual
Alright.
tu more on delivery. Doktor boleh tambahkan?
Dia ada dua benda berbeza. Yang pertama, kalau kita tengok kepada learning style ataupun learning preference, itu merujuk kepada how does our student react towards the learning of the process. Jadi kalau you kata tadi, kalau nak tengok learning style, kinesthetic, auditory and visual, this is how we address on the delivery lah. Tetapi kalau kita nak embed learning style dengan metacognitive ni can be done through activity, can be done through our assessment, and also can be done orang kata apa, to diagnose ataupun to assess their prior knowledge. Boleh. Kan, cuma tinggal the purpose is different, but again macam saya katakan tadi, it can be complementing each other lah. Alright, sebab itu I think that biasanya kalau kita tengok learning style ni, biasanya kita akan buat at the beginning lah, pada waktu awal tu, nak tengok student kita macam mana kan. Apa yang student kita suka. Contohnya lah, masuk kelas, student you suka apa? Suka yang bahan yang berbentuk auditory ke, dia suka visual ke, ataupun dia suka ada aktiviti, ada kinestetik ke, tapi dalam tu kita boleh embed dengan metacognitive activity. Alright, itu tak ada masalah. Alright, do you agree that we should relook our rubric and make changes as student thinking change over the time? Yes, I do agree that we can revisit our rubric.
Yes.
I think that itu yang kita katakan tadi, every time we conduct our class week 1 until week 14, the intervention is not only happen at the end of the semester. The intervention can be happen by week, by time. Apa saja, bila you masuk kelas je, you buat kelas 3 jam, you rasa macam I have to do something, I have to improve my class. Intervention perlu berlaku pada waktu tu. Sebab tu kadang-kadang bila kita kata CQI ni, orang selalu ingat CQI ni dekat ujung-ujung. CQI ni sebenarnya boleh berlaku pada setiap masa, pada setiap hari, pada setiap minggu. Kan? Just because of what? Because of you punya concern is to improve your learning environment, you want to improve your engagement. Jadi kalau you kata rubrik tu boleh tak kita tengok and revisit, boleh, tak ada masalah. And I selalu cakap, if you want to develop a rubric, jangan buat sorang-sorang. Maybe at first you construct sorang-sorang, tapi you maybe have a partner, ataupun you should jumpalah associate professors ke professors to get their second opinion. Is it okay? Test your rubric and reflect and do dan buat penambahbaikan. So dia ada reiteration process untuk tambah baik. Sebab itu saya kata, when I talk about the sustainable assessment, bukan bermaksud we need to change our assessment bila kita rasa assessment ni tak bagus lah, tak efektif lah, tak apalah, belum habis satu semester kita tukar, habis satu semester kita tukar. So meaning that we are not doing a sustainable assessment. Bila kita kata sustainable assessment, we have that assessment, kita tahu ada weaknesses, kita nampak ada opportunity, we do the intervention, we do the action research, we revisit back and then improve. Test balik dekat the second cohort, buat lagi and improve. Itu baru menunjukkan bahawa kematangan dalam menghasilkan satu kursus yang baik. So dia bukan sebab I dapat a negative result, I need to change. Jangan buat macam tu. So bila you buat macam tu, you have to start all over again and you have to rework. Kan, sebab itu I like when the education 5.0 coin about research informed teaching and learning. So meaning that you have to treat you punya kursus itu seolah-olah macam you punya a small research hub on how you want to explore your content, on how you want to explore your learning delivery. Macam mana juga you nak tengok on you punya assessment, and CQI itu akan menentukan proses, sama ada proses itu berlaku dengan baik ataupun tidak. Kan? So sebab tu saya kata what makes you different with others is by understanding your context, and dan juga pada masa yang sama juga you akan sedar nanti makin lama you punya knowledge you akan evolve. Kan, dia akan macam makin lama makin meningkat. Sebab apa? Perasaan ingin tahu tadi tu, the discovery knowledge tu berlaku.
I think if you go back to reflective tadi yang kita talk
Yeah.
about reflective writing tu,
Yeah.
this is the example of outcome why you
Yeah.
need to learn the reflective writing, because
Betul.
this is what it is. You dalam konteks academics, in teaching and learning, you need to write. This is the SUKI punya form lah.
Yeah. Betul. Memang Dr. Hani kata apa? Yeah, that's the word, sustainable assessment. Sustainable assessment memang dalam BPPPA punya mantra lah. So memang one of our tag is we are focusing on the sustainable assessment. Kita tak nak kita nak every each of the lecturers really yang kata apa, buat research yang betul melihat kepada perkara ini. Alright?
Tadi doktor ada sebut juga yang making a rubrics need have several iterations. Saya setuju tu.
Yeah.
In fact, I learn this thing pun dekat dalam waktu membentangkan ni tadi, when I show my metacognitive rubrics tadi pun, I have got some response kan. So yes, after this I'm going to go back and have an iterations on that as well.
Yeah.
So that one is going to happen at my individual level lah. So that's the form of CQI yang mungkin kita boleh demonstrate hari ni lah.
Alright, betul. Agree.
Okay. Would you like to take
I think that you can proceed kot your
okay.
slide, and then kita
Okay.
akan ambil sikit soalan.
Alright, so this is going to be the last topic. Suggested form is essay, and the things that we wanted to assess is argumentations. Now, asalnya yang buat saya a little bit diversion lah. Asalnya yang buat saya jump into education, Dr. Syamsul, I think you pun tak tahu benda ni. It's because saya jadi saya quite bengang lah, dalam negative word dia bengang. Kenapa student susah nak argue constructively? So saya macam kenapa saya tak nampak benda tu. I thought it has to be with I thought semua orang patutnya tahu how argue, punya ada sense of maturity. So let's have a look at this example that I have here. I think this one business study lah. Okay. So maybe saya baca lah. Which conclusion logically follows from the following premises, right? The stock market has fallen 200 points in the past week. So what's your argument? Either you want to buy more stock, it's a bargain. Sell all of my stock, the economy is broken. The economy is inflationary. Consumer confidence is down. Now, saya memang tak ambil business study, so saya tak boleh lah nak jawab soalan ni. But from the generic questions that I read and the selections of answers 1, 2, 3, 4 yang ada ni, I sense that this is what it meant by best answer, isn't it, Dr. Syamsul?
Yes, betul.
Yes.
The best answer.
Yeah, so argumentations kind of assessment will train your students on the best answers that they can get. So the maturity level biasanya kalau saya lah, saya suka je daripada SEM 1 dia dah dedahkan. Cuma dia berscaffolding lah. Maksudnya kalau SEM 1 mungkin saya akan bagi this kind of form. So dia ada multiple choices. So bila macam ni sesuai untuk semester tahun 1 punya students.
Yeah.
When case study is going to have student yang di tahun kedua atau tahun ketiga, right? So the purpose of having this kind of argumentation is that the questions must focus on evidence to support the claim stated in the question stem, right? So that's the elements yang perlu ada lah. So if you wanted to see more on the informed research yang doktor sebut tadi, saya sebut evidence based tapi dah macam medical pula tadi. Research informed practice, yes. Research informed practice.
Teaching and learning.
Research informed practice for teaching and learning.
Yeah.
So you can have a look at PDF 10 yang saya provide dalam Google Doc tersebut. Okay. So when we wanted to assess the argument, the quality of argument, right? So these are the left column is the quality construct yang kita boleh tengok lah. Okay, these are the operational yang mungkin will guide us in having the rubrics, right? So we start with the quality of the claims. Okay, does the conclusion relevant to the problem atau support solution or related to the needs, right? The premises as a whole support specific conclusion, claim, is it consistent, right? Kalau consistent dengan claims tu, and then kita go pula adequacy of the premises, okay? dia stated clearly tak, explicit tak dia punya stance on this matter. I think have a look at this trait that we have here. Bila this kind of assessment kita buat pada students law for example, mungkin tak ada problem kot. Tapi when we try out to do this pada students let's say sains gunaan, topik dia case study on ecosystem, ecological system for example, then this construct are going to be are going to help you in along the way. So instead of they only design the ecosystem ke apa ke, contoh dalam saya bagi kalau konteks engineering saya dalam apa tu sustainable energy for example, if they don't support their claims why they are using solar, so macam mana dekat situ. So we wanted to see the maturity of them in arguing, right? So we have credibility of premises, counter arguments, and then organizations of the argument, the thought flow. This is where you can see deductive and inductive thinking lah. Biasanya kalau students yang ada deductive ni, dia akan terlepas certain bias dia sendiri and will be very strong in his argument lah.
Ini baru kita lihat kepada argumentative punya kata apa approach. Kita belum tengok lagi beberapa approach yang lain. I think that we have the clarification, we have the cause and effect. Kita ada kita kata apa evidence based dan sebagainya. So argumentative approach sahaja pun dah ada banyak orang kata apa dia punya sub criteria yang kita boleh lihat. Wonderful. And ada satu soalan Amalina daripada rakan kita juga, Doktor. How about if we want to look which task is the best for student based on student capability? Alright, meaning to change, adapt, redesign, restructure, or accordingly. Any comment? Whether you want to adapt, you want to adopt, you want to redesign, for me, is depending on the context. Tetapi what I want to share with you here is how can we design our assessment that the first number one, when we design any case study, when we design our assignment, the assignment, the task allow student to respond and express their opinion. That's number one. All right. So meaning that the student have the ability to express the opinion and asking back. All right. Number two, how do you as the lecturers making a connections with your discipline and the experience? How do you use the concepts of relationships and relating? Again, the prior knowledge and the new knowledge gained in the class. And number three, you need to allow the student to have their reasoning, their own reasoning. Sebab tu saya kata tadi, quantitative and qualitative reasoning is very important. All right, it's very important. How do you want to address this? And the last, how can you reconstruct the knowledge to make sure that the students say your knowledge is making sense? All right, what you talk to me is something that making sense. Nak dapat yang making sense tu, you have to design your assessment accordingly. Whether you adopt, whether you adapt, whether you redesign dan sebagainya. So you kena pegang 4 benda ni. Responding, relating, reasoning, and reconstructing. Then the student will do their, and the student, you will see the student how they change and respond your assignment differently, inshallah. All right.
I just wanted to add, when designing rubrics, I think if we approach designing rubric with inductive thinking and have a collaborative, work collaboratively with others, then we are going to have an inclusive rubrics rather than we start with deductions. We don't see the bias that we have out of our own discipline. Kan kadang-kadang dalam disiplin sendiri pun dia ada sub-disiplin yang berbeza-beza. So yeah, the challenge would be on collaboration work.
Yeah, the collaboration work and also the discourse type. Sama ada you nak go for inductive or deductive. So itu juga nak kena lihat lah. Alright.
Alright, so takeaway from this kind of this type of form of assessment is that student be able to practice constructive criticism, right? So they when you conduct, bila you provide them this kind of assessment, especially those yang dah tahun ketiga, they learn beyond memorizing. They learn on how to constructively critique some opinion, right? They also going to acknowledge the diversity of thinking process, because everybody have a different thought processes. Okay, it is very temperament, and it is very terkait dengan culture developmental process dia lah. Okay, so we wanted to celebrate that kind of individual dekat dalam kelas tu. So if we don't have this, if we limited our assessment untuk langsung throughout SEM 1 sampai SEM 6 tu, kita tak memerhatikan this kind of argumentative assessment, I'm afraid that it's going to, kita akan persia-siakan lah students punya ability tu. Because remember, the students are going to follow what kind of assessment yang kita bagi. So if we don't piggyback atau make some changes to our behavior, we are going to jeopardize our students punya ability as well. So they are going to be able to waive the quality of one's premises, also be able to advancing this course. This is number 4 ni, yang evidence of intellectual development. Right, I'm going to touch a bit of intellectual development. I already approach to penamat dah ni, Dr. Syamsul. So saya nak, saya rasa I have to, because I noticed that Dr. Syamsul have these kinds of philosophical approach. Okay, so I think I'm going to inject this thing as well, because this is where I start. Remember I said tadi argument kan, saya rasa macam geram ni, kenapa student tak boleh buat argument yang konstruktif. And then I search, and then I found this intellectual development stages, right? And then starts from dualism, multiplicity, relativism, commitment. And I think if we can have this argumentative assessment, if we really look into this argumentative assessment, kalau kita start daripada SEM 1 tadi, kita bagi dia multiple choices tahun 1, and then tahun 2 mungkin kita boleh embed sedikit well structured soalan, and then soalan ketiga yang is an open-ended questions, maybe boleh embed dekat dalam ethical class, like environmental study contohnya lah. Okay, so we can develop these kinds of intellectual development. In fact, this is what the purpose of going to university, having tertiary educations, is that you need to have this sort of intellectual capacity. So how are we going to develop that? The minimal part is from argumentation tadi. Sebab bila you take part argument, you akan ada pro and cons. That's the very basic. So that one will create the level 1 dualism ni lah. Okay, wrong and true. And then maybe we can discuss as years goes by, tahun kedua, in fact tahun kedua tu mungkin multiplicity ni kita akan tengok bila kita apply them multiple choice. So they see that ada banyak premise yang dia kena consider. Right, and then we go along into degree, they will start to see the relativism, and then they starts to have a commitment towards that thing. So by the time students complete their punya bachelor, we have this intellectual development inclusively into our curriculum. Just a piggyback of our form of assessment, include the argumentations dekat dalam case study ataupun projects ataupun essay. Okay, so the overall takeaway from this webinar, so problem solving, capable to assess meaningful learning, such as to think critically. So that's the purpose of this webinar hari ni. Kita nak tengok macam mana kita nak piggyback the current existing assessment kita pakai, tapi now to really deliberately assess the critical thinking part. And then assessing meaningful learning requires more than one form of assessment. So we have go through all the possible ataupun workable example. And that thinking process can be assessed through cognitive skills, yang tadi saya dah senaraikan tadi, metacognitive, and then argument, right? So performance rubric or constructive argument. Okay, thank you. Again, kepada yang terlambat masuk, this is campus saya di Bukit Besi. We have 3 program here. Mechanical engineering, chemical engineering and also hygiene. Sebab last time Doktor, I read through Twitter, student tu dah happy sangat dapat masuk universiti, tapi dia tulis tu, dapat masuk UiTM Sungai Besi. We don't have diploma in Sungai Besi, we have in Bukit Besi. Okay, over to you Doktor. Terima kasih.
Alright, okay, Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Amalina, for your wonderful thought, for your wonderful sharing. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for the wonderful participants yang berada di YouTube. Alright, dengan live chat yang tak putus-putus, and we try our best to address all the questions. And I hope that this afternoon, lepas petang ni nanti pukul 2:30, designing rubric for digital skill, I think that lagi best, lagi interesting. Dan kita akan bawa speaker tu daripada Fakulti Sains Komputer dan Matematik Shah Alam. Ni bukan dekat Bukit Besi lah. Yang ini naik naik Grab sampai insya-Allah. Cuma tinggal kena tahan Roblox tak tahan Roblox je lah. Alright, so and I think that insya-Allah kita akan jumpa petang nanti. Alright, kita akan jumpa petang nanti. I hope that jangan lupa subscribe, like, turn on bell, sebab nanti senang je pergi dekat BPA terus dapat live view, akan dapat notification dengan mudah sekali. So saya ucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada semua peserta untuk pagi ini. Terima kasih banyak-banyak. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Hari ini kita ada lebih kurang 560 orang yang menyertai kita secara live, dan terima kasih juga kepada subscriber yang telah subscribe page BPPA ini. InsyaAllah kita akan jumpa petang nanti. Kita sudahi majlis kita dengan tasbih kifarah dan juga umul kitab Al-Fatihah. Terima kasih semua. Sampai jumpa lagi. Terus
Assalamualaikum.
terima kasih daripada UiTM untuk semua yang hadir, baik daripada UiTM dan juga di luar UiTM. Semua maklumat ini kita akan sediakan di ruangan description, dan tuan-tuan dan puan-puan boleh akses maklumat ini ataupun konten ini selepas kita tamatkan live ni, insya-Allah akan ada recorded version. Alright. Okay, sampai jumpa lagi semua. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye bye.